My apologies, folks. Ready to call this meeting in order at 5:32. Okay. Thank you for joining us. Trustee Ramsey, do we have a quorum?
Yes.
Okay, please join me for Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Okay. Okay, before we get started, I wanted to inform the public that this is a special meeting scheduled by the board. This meeting is being conducted tonight so that the board can consider hiring a firm to conduct a superintendent search. When we get to the item, staff will explain the process in more detail. Please be advised that the special board meeting public comment is to be limited to the agenda items only. There will be no public comment on non-agenda items. With that being said, we will move forward with item one. Well, it's going to be item 2, public comment on public comment on open session item. Ms. Rumsey, please read the.
Members of the audience may address the Board of Education on agenda items during consideration of that item. Speaking time is limited to 3 minutes per speaker with a maximum of 20 minutes per topic. Persons wishing to speak should submit a public comment card prior to the meeting. Our first speaker is Michelle Weisenberg.
Good evening. I'm Michelle Weisenberg, a parent in the district. My kids have graduated out, a taxpayer, a homeowner in the district. On January 5th, Dr. Hansen was fired with no notice, no cause, and no plan. No plan. It has been 3 months. 3 months on Wednesday, and you are just now getting around to interviewing search firms, and only because the public and the board minority demanded it at the last meeting. What were you waiting for? How long would you have waited had we not demanded this? And why was this group of firms selected? Why do we have firms here like LINQM, I wouldn't even try to pronounce how they might pronounce that, who don't have any expertise in education, and Summit Search, who mostly focuses at college level, and WorldBridge, who also doesn't really have an education focus? Why are they here? And you've got Hazard. Looks like they're a hazard for every district they work for, Placentia Yorba Linda, San Francisco. Where are the top search firms in the U.S., and where is Leadership Associates, who we have used in the past successfully? I just want to know, because I feel like you still don't have a plan and are maybe just throwing things together by the seat of your pants just to appease people. Good luck.
The next speaker is Darshan Smolodin.
Michelle's taller than I am. Good evening, board. My name is Darshan Smolodin, and I am a parent in the district. I'm also a parent of 2 graduates. I am a homeowner, taxpayer, and all of that stuff here in OUSD. I'm here to talk about the agenda item, but also I'm here to talk about the agenda itself. I have a problem with coming here to try and give my input as a taxpayer, so as someone who's paying for this, that we didn't have full disclosure. I mean, yes, we were provided with a list of, the names of these companies, and so of course, I love the internet, and so I tried to do my thing, but part of this was, are we going to find out how much each of these companies is charging us? And why couldn't we disclose that prior? I think that since you received proposals, it would have been expected that we could have that information. So again, we have a lack of transparency. We have possibly predetermined who's going to get this. So I would also like to make a request that if Mr. Ortega has any other friends or counterparts who have a role in this company, we know that you've had a relationship with one of the people in the past, and our former acting temporary superintendent also has a role with them. We'd like to have that disclosed to the public. And then I guess I'm going to say the quiet part out loud. It is disappointing that Leadership Associates, who does 73/4 of the placements in this state, is not here. So I think it's embarrassing to us as a district that we have outstanding finances, we have a great staff, and we don't have a company that wants to come in because they don't want to be involved in this, because they don't want to bring quality candidates in, because they can't guarantee that this is going to be a positive experience. And I don't think it's because of me. So that's it.
The next speaker is Soren Williams.
Hello again, board. I'm a parent and a resident in the district. Tonight we're here for another special meeting, this time to select a search firm to find our next superintendent. So I also have questions about this. Is this going to cost us $10,000, $20,000, $50,000? Is it a flat fee? Are we paying like a percentage of their salary? Those are some interesting things I'd like to know. Let's do a quick recap here. This board majority fired a great superintendent in January for no reason. We're still paying her salary, which is significant. Then they hired John Ortega's buddy for a few weeks of work, which was what, 50 grand of our tax dollars. Now we are here in April and just starting our search for a permanent superintendent. Again, none of this had to happen. This was a choice by the board majority, an incompetent choice, and all it's gotten us is wasted taxpayer money, chaos in our district, a couple lawsuits against this board, and then quite a bit of media coverage of the incompetence here. So to the issue at hand here, it appears there's maybe 3 of the firms out of the 6 that have any kind of educational job placement, and one of them's kind of already got 2 strikes against them in this district. So I'll address the other 2, which are Summit Search and HYA. Start with looking at our former superintendent's qualifications and her resume. We deserve at least that level of experience and competence, not less. Our kids and the teachers that work with this superintendent deserve a smart, engaged superintendent that doesn't subscribe to extremist ideologies. Anyone, and I would caution them to look at the background of any candidates that you're proposing. Anyone attached to any of these organizations, Cal Policy Center, Conservative Patriots of Orange County, Hillsdale College, we don't need more incompetence in this district, so steer clear of them, please. Thank you.
The next speaker is John Sanks.
Good evening. My daughter attends an Orange USD elementary school, and like the previous speaker, I have no idea why it's been 3 months since we fired the superintendent and still have not even retained a recruiter. There's no reason an RFP for a recruiter couldn't have gone out in January, but that would take a level of planning and forethought that so far this board has not exhibited. It's difficult to make meaningful public comments before hearing the consultant presentations and without reviewing the proposals, so I'm going off of what's publicly available. I do have concerns about McPherson and Jacobson. Their website still shows our previous interim superintendent, Edward Velasquez, is affiliated with this firm. The board majority clearly selected Mr. Velasquez for the position prior to a publicly noticed meeting. He clearly has prior relationships with members of the board majority that have not been adequately disclosed. The board majority has not been forthcoming how they chose to select Mr. Velasquez, a person who lives in Idaho and is an affiliate of McPherson and Jacobson. The taxpayers have had to pay to fly him back and forth during his short term here, and we still haven't been told why. In normal times, these relationships would need to be disclosed and publicly discussed. But we're not in normal times, and this board majority should be striving to go beyond requirements for conflict of interest and transparency. Additionally, from looking at board minutes, I can see McPherson and Jacobson had a previous contract terminated in August of 2017. I question why we're bringing in a consultant for interviews if it didn't work out in the past. Now, perhaps not disqualifying, I do also have some questions about the other firms. I've done searches for some, such as Hazard, Young, Attia, and Associates, where news stories are showing that they've come to districts, they charge a lot of money, and then there are allegations of poor performance on the back end. So I want to understand, well, what will all this bring? What will these firms bring us? What are they going to do to justify the costs? And what are these costs? I hope this is all brought up in the presentations to us so we can help understand. I ask for a transparent and ethical hiring process free from conflict of interest. I disagree with the board's decision to fire the superintendent, but I do want us to move forward beyond this. But we have to remember that the previous superintendent was fired at enormous taxpayer expense. And we need to make sure moving forward there is no hint of conflict, and we select the most qualified individual as a permanent superintendent, even if that person is not your political ally. Thank you.
Gregory Pleasance.
Well, hello, I'm Gregory. I'm a parent. I have 2 kids at Jordan Elementary. I'm a homeowner and resident of OUSD. And I want to make a comment about the fact that we're having a search under these circumstances. And what the circumstances amount to are a lack of transparency. I mean, here are some of the things that we don't know about the process. We don't know if there was a request for proposals. We don't know what the terms of that request for proposals were. We don't know the total contract cost authorized. We don't know if there are particular performance clauses that you will require of a new superintendent. We don't know the payment structure. We don't know if there's a conflict of interest clause. We know that John Ortega is not afraid to deal to his business partners doing school business, or, for all we know, some of these candidates have business relationships with Rumsey, Minor, or Ortega. We don't know those things, and we should, because that is what good governance looks like. Good, sound, unafraid, accountable governance looks like a government that doesn't hide the ball. So here's what you could have done. The board majority, Ortega, Rumsey, Ledesma, and Minor. Here's what you could have done if you were actually ethical and transparent public servants. You just would have put the information, starting with the RFP, online beforehand. And you would have done it with plenty of time for folks to look at it. And you would have been prepared to field actual questions about it at this meeting. But you haven't done any of that. You've not said anything. You've not answered these basic questions. So ironic when you have repeatedly, and hypocritically, of course, touted, in your case, Ledesma, your financial bona fides, your fiscal conservatism. In your case, Minor, parent choice. Give me a break. How are parents supposed to exercise meaningful choice when you don't give them any information about what you're doing? That's absurd. I mean, the hypocrisy and incompetence of you people doesn't know any end. It's astounding that I have to sit here and say these things to you. You've even put the public comment period before the presentations. How are we supposed to comment on the presentations if we haven't seen them yet? What I see here are people who are pursuing a different agenda that consists, as far as I can tell, in destroying public education to fund private religious schools, intolerant religion of your own brand, Minor and Rumsey, and working for the California Policy Center and others like it to break teacher union power, none of which serves the interest, all parents of any student in this district.
Kathy Moffitt.
Good afternoon, board members. My name is Kathy Moffitt. I'm a former member of this board for 22 years. I'm a parent of graduates from this district. I live in this district, and I'm a 100% supporter of Orange Unified School District. I'm here to talk about why we are here to choose a search firm. As has been alluded to, we're here because 3 months ago, we fired potentially maybe the best superintendent in the state of California. At least that's what her new employer says about her. After reviewing more than 30 qualified candidates, the Westminster School District has hired Dr. Gunmarie Hansen, who formerly was our superintendent. Her duties include fiscal, operational, and educational leadership, as well as creating plans for improving student learning with an emphasis on innovation while building on Westminster's strengths. She used to do that for us. I'm incredibly honored, says Dr. Hansen, to be the superintendent of Westminster School District, and I look forward to collaborating with the Board of Education and the entire community of learners to continue to accelerate achievement and develop state-of-the-art programs for students, just like she used to do for us. Hansen's resume includes more than 32 years of public school experience, along with numerous academic achievements, awards, community and business partnerships, having earned a doctorate in educational policy and administration from USC. She's spent nearly all of the last 13 years working for Orange
Kathy,
Unified.
I'm afraid this is off topic, right?
No.
We're talking about
This is
Superintendent
about
Church.
why we are
You're letting
searching
us
for a
know
superintendent.
about,
Her many
former superintendent.
accolades as superintendent include the Orange County School Boards Association's Maureen DeMarco
Just understand
Award
that
for
we are not
exemplary
following
leadership in
protocol
service
here.
of young people.
So in
And
other
also
instances, when
honored by the
protocol is not
4th
being
District
followed,
PTA's
hard
Administrator of the Year in 2022.
to rein it in, just so you know.
Dr. Hansen held administrative and teaching positions in Compton Unified and Montebello Unified School Districts, as well as the Los Angeles County Office of Education, and is a professor at California State University, Los Angeles. Westminster noted that Dr. Hansen has spent her career focusing on the career value of supporting educational excellence and ensuring successful operations of award-winning schools, just like she did when she was here. Leadership Associates, which is the leading consulting firm that assisted with the selection process for Westminster, and they produced the stellar candidate, Dr. Gunmarie Hansen, and a firm that has not asked to work for Orange Unified in this capacity because of this board majority. Leadership Associates touted the field of applicants that included Dr. Hansen as one of the best superintendent candidates pools of all time. And Dr. Hansen rose to the top of that. Westminster School Board President Dr. David Johnson said the district is becoming a desirable place for discerning parents, staff, and teachers. Now we will also boast of one of the best superintendents in the entire state, and she is in alignment with our goals for excellence. He said, "Welcome home, Dr. Hansen. We are so fortunate to have you take the lead in Westminster School District. We deserve better than what we're getting from this board majority." Amen.
The next speaker is Jenny.
Hold on 1 second. Understand, folks, that when we blur the lines of protocol, we blur the lines of protocol. So if there's ever a speaker that is off topic that you don't agree with, it's going to be hard for me to shut them down too, I guess. Just understand that. We're blurring the lines of protocol.
On the topic at hand.
That was on
You
topic.
do not have the right
Go
to
ahead.
interrupt her.
Go ahead.
Jenny Sloan.
All right. I'm Jenny Sloan. I have a daughter at La Veta and a son at Santiago Middle. I'm also a homeowner. President Ledesma, I'm glad you finally are beginning to hire a firm so they can begin to hire a superintendent eventually. I mean, the schools went through an entire trimester, and now we're starting this, so congrats on that. So
here's what I expect from the next part of the process. One, a hiring process that's completely transparent outside of actual legal requirements of privacy or non-disclosure. Two, a choice of firm that is not a conflict of interest for any of the board members, no affiliations or payments of any kind for any board members, their families, their friends, etc. Three, clear instructions provided to the firm on what is expected, avoiding any vagaries of definition like those given to the interim superintendent, because we never got an answer about what that $70,000 was supposed to get us, and it got us nothing. Number four, a superintendent that is familiar with our history and needs. At the very least, it might be from California so that they would know what a California school district does. That would be helpful. Number five, a full interview process that includes all board members, not held at special emergency meetings, but at scheduled actual meetings, so that members are fully prepared and informed to make decisions. It would be nice if everybody knew when the meetings were and how they were going to go so they could make a real decision. Same goes for the public. You can see how few people showed up today. These sorts of things are unacceptable. Number six, since you've decided to take on all this extra work of firing a fantastic superintendent and spending all this money and now having to do all the processes of hiring a new superintendent and having all these special meetings, I support the idea that you guys work twice a month, not just once a month, because you clearly don't have time to get your job done and you're throwing together these emergency meetings. So it looks like you're going to have to do some extra work to make up for all this stuff that you have created for us. Anything less than these things that I am looking for is a full dereliction of your duties. This is your job. This is your job. Tell us what's going on. Give us a chance to hear what is happening and be able to respond to it. It's your job. And then, if you don't do that, we will hold you accountable. We will. We're going to tell everybody we know. We are going to have a recall. We will. You can think that this doesn't matter. It matters to us, to every bit of our community. It doesn't matter if you have kids in the school, because it is the heart and soul of our community. It is our schools. Thank you so much.
Last comment is Alex Broussard.
Ladies and gentlemen of the board, my name is Alex Broussard. I'm a parent in the district. My daughter is at McPherson, which is just an absolutely amazing school. I'm here on a Monday evening to discuss with you the hiring of a selection firm for a superintendent because you fired the best one in the state. It's absolutely mind-blowing that we have to find a new superintendent when we had the best one that there was to have. But we're here. At the cost of $450,000 for Dr. Hansen, another $50,000 for 6 weeks of Mr. Ortega's buddy, and an ongoing expense for Ms. Corella, who should be educating. I'm informed that that's 6 or 7 teachers. How many more teachers are you going to cost us? We don't know, because you haven't disclosed the financial information that comes with these proposals. Yet again, we're operating without transparency for the parents, without transparency for the school district. We're here 3 months after you fired our last superintendent. 3 months to have a meeting to select a firm to maybe select another superintendent. Well, now you're facing 2 lawsuits, and the recall is coming. So keep delaying, keep doing nothing. We're glad you're doing nothing. Thank you.
Is that it, Ms. Ramsey? Okay. Mr. Gonzalez? Move on to item 3A.
So for 3A, we're going to have both Mr. Rivera and Neil Groom, the purchasing director, go over the process for tonight.
President Ledesma, members of the board, Mr. Gonzalez, and for the rest of the community, we want to outline for you the process that has occurred after the board approved the request for proposal in an open session. So I'm going to have Mr. Groom walk through the process, the timelines, and what has led us up to today. Mr. Groom?
Thank you. Good evening. After we received approval to move forward with the request for proposals, we published that notification on our website as well as on Planet Bids, which is a hosting platform for getting out RFPs nationwide. So this went out nationwide. That's why you see some firms from different areas of the country as well. In that process, we also reached out to the individual firms by phone to gather whether they're interested in or not in the RFP process. We reached out to 34 firms, and then we got confirmation back from about 7 of them. And some of them are included on the list, and some of them decided not to participate in the particular process at this time. After we received the proposals, by the way, the timeline for this was about 4 weeks. After we received the proposals in, they were evaluated against the request for proposal criteria in there, and that's where some of these firms were found to be responsive to those particular requirements. The qualifications portion of it is what the board is looking at tonight. So that's where each of these candidates will be providing a presentation to the board for them to do some final evaluation on and make some determination. After that process has concluded, the normal route would be the proposals will then be available publicly. Currently, they are in the evaluation process, so we don't want to have any of the proposers having information that may give them an advantage over another proposer at that point. The pricing part of it is something that is subject to negotiation at the end as well. While they contain some of the pricing elements in their proposal, it may be that the board is deeming certain things beneficial to them and other things they want to add on as part of that proposal process. So after the board makes a choice on that, then we can move forward with the next steps of more full disclosure on those particular items because the evaluation period has concluded.
So at the end of this process that the board will be interviewing these candidates, you're going to be providing staff direction on calendaring an agreement. The agreements that we did receive, the tentative agreements, the proposed agreements, we forwarded to our counsel to review, and he has been in dialogue with some of the vendors in their proposals. So really we're waiting for the board decision and deliberation on the next steps. You have interview questions in front of you. You have a presentation that you're going to hear. In case they haven't responded or answered your questions, you have some sample questions in front of you that you can ask as we go through that process. The candidates are in a conference room, and we're bringing them up one by one as you're ready to start the interview process. Is there any questions that we can answer about the process?
Mr. Rivera, I was talking with Karen, and there's a rating sheet that's supposed to come to us as board members that we can use. You have it? Okay, good. Can we each one of the? On the several pages. Okay. Okay. So what I like to ask, unless somebody has a better idea, is as we hear each of these proposals, to kind of rate them, and then at the end, this will kind of expedite, otherwise we're going to be voting on 6 different votes. So the idea would be to rate them, and at the end, we can kind of see where each one fell, who ended up at number 6, and who ended up at number 1, and that way we can decide how we're gonna vote from there. Because if a few of these end up at 5 or 6, then we don't even probably need to vote on them. Okay, so if you can kind of be diligent about after every speaker or at the end, develop some kind of rating system, please. That will help us when we get to at the end when we're ready to vote. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Rivera.
Thank you.
Before we start the process, I have a question.
Sure.
It was my understanding that tonight we're just going to do the interview and that we will vote on a firm at the next meeting.
Okay, this is set up as information, discussion, or action item. So if a majority of the board members are willing and ready to vote tonight, we could vote on a firm. If a majority wants to hold off and pick 2 and pick 1 at the next meeting, that's fine too. If we don't pick any, then we don't pick any. But that's why it was agendized as information, discussion, action item. So this gives us we can turn this into an action item by voting on one of these firms. If a majority of the board members here are ready to vote on one firm.
Okay, I'm looking at my Friday packet, and it says, as mentioned above, the chosen firm would then be agendized for the April 13th board meeting. So that means we're going to choose a firm tonight, and then they'll be agendized on the 13th for what then?
Their contract, a vote of their contract.
See, it wasn't clear to me.
What's that?
It wasn't clear to me that that's what we were going to do.
Well, I'm sorry that it wasn't clear, but that's.
My understanding was that we were going to do the interview today and that we would be voting on a firm on the 13th.
Again, as I said, if a majority of the board is ready to vote on a firm tonight, we have set this up so this can be voted on tonight.
Because I would like an opportunity to go back, digest everything, and not make a decision on the fly.
I'm just telling you, it's going to be the will of the majority of the vote of the firm.
To be consistent with parent choice, to have some feedback and write that on
So,
the agenda.
so if a majority of the board is ready to vote tonight, we will select a firm tonight. If we're not going to vote tonight, then we have to figure out something, whether bring back 2 and vote on in April. Please, folks, we're trying to conduct a meeting here. Okay?
It seems like you're not.
I
guess it's just some parents' choices, minor.
Mr. Ledesma?
Is there a protocol as to comments that are made from the audience like this?
Well, typically we can, Mr. Superintendent?
Is there like a board policy or something?
Yes, the
Civility policy?
board president can direct staff if they'd like in regards to, the comments, going on and holding the meeting and holding the business of the meeting.
If comments continue from one individual consistently, are we able to remove them from the meeting?
At the president's direction, we can.
Okay, thank you. So please allow us to conduct this meeting. Appreciate that. And anything more, Ms. Yamasaki, Trustee Yamasaki?
I mean, that was my understanding of the process, and so I'm kind of caught off guard. I'm not sure how the others perceived it, because I was reading you what it says right here, and I guess it could be taken both ways, but I feel like it wasn't clear.
So at some point, what is the protocol then? If we're unclear about something in our Friday packet, do we contact Mr. Gonzalez or the board president?
Yeah, that is the protocol to contact me, and I did get contacted by at least one board member that asked me that specific question, and I answered it.
I believe that was me, Mr. Ledesma, and the answer I got was that it wasn't clear whether we were going to vote tonight, that it was going to be up to this body to decide, that it was vague. So
Is that how you answered, Mr. Gonzalez?
I said that we agendized it as an action item, but just as with any other action item that we agendize for any meeting, it's up to the board to decide what they'd like to do.
So it's up to the board to decide tonight whether or not we vote for affirm.
Yes, or narrow down the field.
Right.
To to another, finals or semifinals. It's up to the board.
So typically on the agenda, it would say recommendation on here, and there's no recommendation to say it is recommended to choose a firm tonight.
We're developing that recommendation on which firm.
So the board president and the superintendent create this agenda together, correct?
Right.
Okay.
I'm just,
And the desire from the public comment is that a firm be chosen.
Well, that we expedite. I mean, we've already heard
But
that
because
we're
it's been
not
3
moving
months.
fast enough. So it's one or the other. We need either move.
I'm not saying that we need to vote tonight. I'm not saying that. But I'm hearing that that's a desire.
I would like us to move forward as quickly as possible, but at the same time, I want to make sure that we do a very thorough, diligent job.
I agree. I
So,
completely agree. And I
I-
am willing
I think
to narrow
I
it
mean,
down.
This is
you've had
I'm
these
willing to narrow it
proposals.
down tonight and wait. We're going to do it right.
well, this is just it was an honest question.
Yeah.
That was my understanding, and so that's why I asked it. It's
No,
not
and that's
meant
a
to
good question.
be, it's not meant to try to make the process go longer. That was my understanding, so.
And that's what I'm telling you. We've got options tonight. And one of those options is to select a firm. If a majority of the board is ready to vote and select a firm, we can select a firm. If we're not, we can pick two to bring back at our next meeting and vote on, or pick none.
Okay.
I mean,
I just
it's-
want
we
to
have
lay
several
down the
options here.
groundwork to know
Right,
that
right.
could be an option, and that we're not
Right.
forced to pick a firm tonight if we decide
Well,
not to.
no one's forced, but again, if a majority of the board is ready to vote tonight for a firm, what that would mean is we would vote on a firm, and then that firm would go into negotiations with our staff, and then we would bring back a contract at the April 13th meeting. Okay?
And
So-
so I would appreciate it if you just said the board instead of the majority, because when you say the majority, it seems to me that you're trying to segregate us.
Well, you tell me that you may not be ready to vote, or that you don't understand.
Yeah, but I'm just saying that,
Okay, well,
we need a
again, fine.
cohesive board, and so I'm
I
pointing
said
out
if a
that I feel
majority
like
of the
it's
board, if
important.
the majority could be 6, the majority could be 5, the majority could be,
You could just,
so,
I'm just pointing that out. It just creates some conflict.
well, I'm sorry if it does, but I'm just telling you, the majority could be 7.
Mr. Ledesma?
Yes.
Just to calm people down, the normal thing is that how this has been done for the experiences that Mr. Ledesma have had is this: you interview the firm or firms, see which one rises to the surface. The board chooses the firm that evening, and then the next board meeting approves the contract based on negotiations and everything that has been going through the Office of Contracts. So this isn't difficult or challenging. It's very basic. It's you do an interview. If just like any job interview, if you like the candidates, great. If you don't, you don't.
Well, in a
And you
typical
move
job
forward.
interview, you wouldn't pick the same person that same day.
Yes, you can.
Typically,
How many experiences have you had doing job
I've had
interviews
some,
and choosing
thank
them?
you.
So you can choose the same
So-
day. So with that, so again, folks, it's just it's a basic concept of interview the firm, which one rises. If none rise, then we go back out again. It was publicly announced, as the gentleman just stated earlier. So there isn't anything here other than let's do the interviews and see what rises.
Well, I just wanted to make sure the process was clear.
Well, I don't understand, when it says information, discussion, action item, I didn't get any phone calls asking for clarification about that. So I thought it was clear that when you agendize something as information, discussion, and/or action item, that's what it communicates.
Mr. Ledesma, it's unclear. I mean, we either have information items or we have action items. We don't have information dash action. That doesn't make sense. We've never had that. But even if that's the case that you want to vote tonight, because it sounds like the majority of the board wants to, which is fine.
Nobody's saying that we're
But I
going to
would
vote
say
tonight.
that if we can
How do
we
you
at least?
how do you get to the majority? I don't
Well, you've said
understand
it
that.
like 3 times, so
Yeah.
that's what I'm saying.
I'm
So
not the majority.
if we do go forward on the
I'm an
13th,
individual.
I would just ask, if we do go forward on the 13th to vote, which is what we did tell the public we were going to do at our last meeting, and that's why I called, because I said I didn't know we were voting on the 3rd. I thought we were voting on the 13th. And that was the answer I got. But I would hope that we could at least narrow it down if we don't vote tonight to maybe 2 or 3 firms, just so that we don't waste anybody's time.
Exactly. That's why I said we could vote on one tonight. We could vote on a couple and bring them back on the 13th. So it's open. It's open, okay?
I have no plan on necessarily voting tonight. So, it is up to, I suppose, the process.
Right.
And
Well, that's
I am
why
fine waiting.
Well, that's why I just wanted to clarify the process, because earlier the statement you made, it sounded like we had to choose someone tonight. So I wanted to make sure. And
The
that's
statement
why
I
I
made
asked the
was-
question, and so now you've answered.
The statement I made was the same statement that I just made, which was,
No, I think in the beginning you said we're going to vote on someone tonight.
no, I also
And Ms.
said,
Yamasaki, thank you for your question. It was actually the same question I had to staff when we, were talking about the process as well. And Mr. Rivera and Mr. Groom are more well-versed than I am, so they were telling me about the various options that the board has. And so we worked with council to make sure that it was agendized in a way that if the board felt comfortable with deliberating more, that they could. If they felt like they wanted to, narrow down the field, that they could. But if they felt strongly that they had a candidate, they wanted to move forward, that they could also do that.
right.
You.
Anyone else? Okay, let's go forward.
Good morning, board. Thank you very much for having us.
Good evening, welcome.
Hello, thank you for having us.
So my name is Mark Detour. I work here with Lincoln. This is Amira Sleek, and we're representing a search firm that is local and have lived here and worked here for the last 15 years. And we just appreciate the opportunity to get to support something that is local to us and important for everyone involved. I myself will be leading the project, 32 successful placements of long-term employment for executive and operational talent across public and private sectors. So while this is our first superintendent search, I think that we're well-positioned both as a local entity and one that's responsible to the local environment that can provide services and a open feedback to you all on making the right decision.
So like Mark mentioned, our team will be handling the search. So we'll be sourcing, we'll be qualifying, and we will be interviewing the talent. As well, we're gonna negotiate any contract terms. So we've done confidential searches and we've done public searches. So the lead on this position will be Corey McMenamin. He's worked on over 45 executive searches for the past 17 years. I will be handling the sourcing and the qualifying. And like Mark mentioned, even though we have not worked for a superintendent search, we are local to the area, so this means more to us. We know the importance of this, not just for the board, but for the community and for the children. So our approach is a little unconventional. We try to speak to as many talent and potential as possible in a way that we speak to them even though they're not advertised as seeking a new opportunity. This way we can try and find more talent. As well, our team of recruiters are trained in new technology, so that way we can connect and we can network with more talent. As well, our approach in recruitment is aggressive, as well as selling our clients. So this means that we advertise our clients for further exposure. And we like to ask specific and detailed questions, so this way we can understand the role, we can understand the needs, we can understand the company, and we can understand what we need to look for. And this way we can take as little time as possible as well. So we will bring a group of diverse candidates that we will review first. And we do this with a 25-step interview process that we screen, we review references, we evaluate background and skill set as well. And then we can narrow it down to the absolute best talent.
So timeline's been something that seems like it's been coming up with this search being a few months behind. Based on what we've worked on that's in a similar scope, we're looking at probably anywhere from 90 days to have a candidate identified with 120 days with the candidate in the seat. Obviously, that is not something that's prescriptive, and it's going to depend on availability for interviews, the feedback process, and basically in terms of what you're looking for through that process, be it certifications, reference checks at any step of the process, to ensure that we're aligned with what the consensus is as far as the right candidate is going forward. In terms of working with the school district, all of the communication would flow through us from a candidate perspective. So questions about representing compensation, any questions that come back from you, all of that would be filtered through us to save any sort of miscommunication and have a single point of contact from a project standpoint on identifying that through the process. So in terms of the fees, at this point, we're looking at an industry standard of around 35% of 35% for a direct hire search. And this would be based on 1 year of total compensation. 15% would be paid on the acceptance of the contract. Obviously, all of this is initially agreed upon before the signature is signed. And then 15% once that person is in the seat, and then after 90 days in the seat, that candidate, the final 5% of the fee would be paid. We do support other non-direct hire searches for contract as well, and those hourly rates would be, including all the statutory costs, you're looking at a 54% markup. As I mentioned, as far as negotiations from a contract standpoint, both with you all as well as through the interview process with candidates, Everything will be documented and tracked. As far as sign off, everything is needed as far as the board representative to move forward with any steps within that process. At this point, any questions that we could answer for you, or as always, come back and answer any additional questions. We appreciate your time.
Any questions? You have a question?
I
Trustee
actually
Erickson.
have more of a comment.
Okay.
Thank you so much for submitting a proposal. Just from a comment standpoint.
Yeah.
You talk about the 35% being industry standard for total compensation. And the amount really that kind of comes out to be is like $100,000. So that is an industry standard for K through 12 searches. That's very, very high. So I'm wondering, is that industry standard for your corporate clients? Or how did you come up with that amount?
So that is, it would be an industry standard for the level of responsibility based on the role across public and private sector clients that we have.
So, but this would be the first search you've done in the K through 12 public school sector?
Specifically for superintendent, correct.
Thank you. And again, I thank you, but that is my comment. It is very, very high, particularly if it's your first search that you've done. So that would be my comment on that.
Appreciate the feedback. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Anyone else?
I have a
Trustee
question.
Yamasaki? Oh,
No, go ahead.
Trustee Rumsey?
Go ahead, you. What other types of positions have you searched for in schools?
Specifically operational and technical roles related to any sort of HVAC or maintenance, as well as on the operation or the administrative side. We have supported various searches up to probably about a staff level manager.
Is that it, Ms. White?
I'm going to ask one of the questions that were given to us. Please describe what you believe are the key elements in conducting a successful superintendent search.
I think that really key is communication with the board, because you all are the stakeholders and the representatives of the people and the constituents of this district. So I think two parts of the communication aspect are being local to understand the pushes and the pulls of this district, and specifically this location, but also understanding what's going to fit based on the feedback through the process that we get when submitting candidates. Hey, I want to see this. I'm not seeing the size of where they're coming from is representative of what we are, what we need going forward.
Okay, I have a
Yeah,
question.
Masaki.
Thank you for being here. My question is, wanted to find out, how do you plan to involve the community in this process?
Well, I think this is a great first step in being visible. Again, coming back to being local, I live up the street, being representative at these meetings to see what constituents are looking for. Seems like choosing a firm is already a little bit of a sore spot with, so again, coming back to communication, being transparent about what is happening and where we are in the process, to be able to incorporate those community voices is going to be important throughout that process to adjust as needed to find the right long-term candidate.
Okay. Thank you. I'm going to be asking this question to every search firm here, and so it's not personal. I want to know, do you have any prior business or relationship with district or any board members?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? No? I've got a question for you. What do you know about our school district? Can you give me any kind of research you might have done?
Yeah, in terms of size, we're looking at about 26,000 students. From a demographic breakdown, we have a fairly good idea of what we're looking at. I think, again, that coming in with a clean slate of information and being able to incorporate what the community is looking for is really going to help us be aligned with what you're looking for, because ultimately, we're just the facilitators of who you're going to be choosing and moving through that process. So being able to take all that information from you guys and ask those questions to go through that process will, I think, identify the candidate that will best suit the needs of the district.
I would like to add as well that a part of our research, we know that this is a very diverse board and district, so that's very important for us. So we would like to help you guys find someone that's going to adjust to that diversity as well, and that will listen to the needs of the children and the parents and the community.
Thank you. All right, I think we're done here. Thank you. Okay, the next firm is going to be Stanton Chase. Trustee Erickson, I asked the other board members to kind of, did you get a package, a rating package? Okay. If you can kind of rate as we go along here, so at the end we can kind of review and, make sure that anyone that nobody wants to come back, we can evaluate that. Basically try to evaluate who's going to be 6 and 5, maybe. Something to that extent, so that we can kind of expedite at the end our decision. Hello, welcome.
Thank you. So my name is Pete Darragon. I'm the managing director of Stanton Chase, LA. Pardon? I have to hit that to speak? Yes. Oh, microphone. Sorry about that. There we go. I can hear myself. My name is Pete Darragon. I'm the managing director of a global firm called Stanton Chase. I'm the local owner. The firm was established in 1990, and my co-founder, Ed Savage, retired, and I took over the, let's see, I'm trying to advance here.
Max, can you come over? Can someone come over and help him? Trying to advance the...
The advance is...
Sorry about that.
No worries. Technology is great when it works. I will continue here. So Stanton Chase has been around for a long time. I've been in executive search for 25 years. We have a multi-discipline firm that operates in every business sector. Higher education is a very important one. We've done a lot of work in, waiting for the slide. There you go, thank you. I don't think this is going to work. There we go. So we have global consultants, but we have a firm that has a local office that's been operating since 1990. The co-founder of the firm started here. We focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's demanded of us and many of the searches that we perform. I personally have done hundreds of searches.
Not working still?
Trying to get advanced on my slide here. Oh, that way?
Maybe he could come sit over here.
There we go. So one of the most important aspects to this, and we're going to have a big overview on how we do a search, and it's our process is usually a 90 to 100-day project for every search that we engage in. In this particular search, the sensitivity to public nature of the role and the recruitment profile that will deliver an excellent candidate is paramount. So we set a timeline that's very specific. This is generally 90 to 100 days. I think I'm, here we go back. Okay, so we would start with a listening tour to establish communications, overview of the search process that we work with, a review of the timeline, and adjust the timeline if we need to. We would review the recruitment profile, which is developed that specifically describes the kind of candidate that you want. The top 5 criteria are going to be very important, and just, top of mind, it would be a great communicator, a great administrator, the ability to have a sense of calm in all situations, security experience, and experience with physical and mental health of not only staff, but the students. As you can see, we have a very specific timeline that seeks to deliver a candidate by July 28th. And we guarantee our searches for 1 year. This is a strategic approach we take. Define the profile, we do research. We'll go out in the marketplace and identify upwards of 100 candidates sometimes. I'll show you later in the slideshow a list of the targets. Generally, when we take on a search, we know who the targets are. We'll get input from the public and the board on how far that aperture has to go geographically. I think that there may be enough districts in California to seek a great candidate, but we oftentimes will do national, if not global, searches. Our approach here is outlined. I'm not going to go into every point here, but developing a list of benchmarks is a perfect way to go before the board and the public to determine if we're on track. And if we are on track, we go out and identify many candidates and write them up. We come down to a finalist list. Oftentimes there will be 3 to 6 individuals on that list. They'll be vetted deeply after initial interviews. The initial interviews are usually 30-minute screens. My team, which is comprised of myself and Bill Brewer, who's managing director in our office. We also get guidance from the global practice leader for higher education, who will be highlighted in the deck too. And again, after the onboarding, we follow up with a 30, 60, 90-day onboarding process to make sure that there are no misunderstandings and there are any issues that we can go through to determine if there's any need for inserting ourselves into the process to coach. This again is a big priority. It's fantastic to be able to have the composition of a leadership team reflect the constituents, which we do all the time. We have a huge network. I do diversity searches for CEOs, CFOs, higher education individuals. We also have networks of people that are in the business of networking with underrepresented people. This is more about DE&I. Just watching my time. So our transparency is important. We actually partner with you and all the stakeholders to make sure that all of our activities are known to you. They're reflected in the reports that we create. They're reflected in the write-ups, and there will be examples of the write-ups later on in the slide deck. Senior partners take the searches seriously and they execute themselves. A lot of firms delegate to junior people within the firm. We do all the interview work ourselves and document it. We ensure a close working relationship throughout the search process and adjust to changing priorities. That oftentimes happens halfway through a search because of situations that we can't control within the organization. We do have a global presence. That's not going to be important here. We have functional expertise. We have people across the United States who advise us on our team to make sure that we're in best practices for everything we do. So here's a little bit of early research that we've performed and some of the targets that we might go after. That's typical at the beginning of a search. Listening sessions are important in this public-facing type of an organization. This listening sessions are like a focus group. We get out input. It's very important from the public. Here's an example. So the recruitment profile is something that we write up, which becomes our marketing document for this role. When we go out to the public in the marketplace to share the specifics of this role, it's going to have all the priorities that are expressed to us documented, and it will also, by law, express the compensation range. And we will also use that recruitment profile to make sure that the people that are applying actually fit and actually check off at least 80% of the boxes that are in that recruitment profile. I'll show you examples. There we go. So there will be the position, education's required, aspirational compensation, an executive summary of this opportunity, the fulfillment of job requirements that have been done prior in this person's career. We document all the transitions in that person's career and make sure that there's not too many short stops, and if there are, we examine the reason for any transition. All the reports, team sizes they've been responsible for, how the candidate entered the organization they're at, and any drivers for leaving that are negative or positive. We've done work for USC. We did a vice president for equity, equal opportunity, and Title IX. It's just an example of the position profile. We go deep with representing some of the key individuals that will be on the leadership team that they would join should they win the position. I'm not having fun with this pointer. There we go. I don't know if I need to have this charged or point it somewhere else, or there we go. Critical competencies, those can go very deep. You've got preferred qualifications. Characteristics are going to be very important. Culture is important. Another thing that we do is go into spending time with the district and finding out more about the culture so that we can represent it accurately. Sometimes you'll have 5 or 6 candidates, they all match the skill requirements, but they don't match the culture. That can be a real fail. And since fail came up, we do guarantee our placements for a year. We replace them if they fail or if they're dismissed for any reason. So the search and selection process pretty much matches what I highlighted in the timeline, but we do an examination of the position profile, discuss the target organizations. You may have organizations that we want to target that we don't have on the list. By week 3, we're looking at benchmarks. We'll show you profiles to make sure we're on track. We'll adjust if necessary. Do an update call. Normally, we would do weekly update calls if people are available. If the search team and the stakeholders are available on a weekly basis. Early in the search, that could be 15 minutes. Late in the search, it could be up to 2 hours. These are just some of our resources. We have a proprietary database. We use LinkedIn Recruiter to verify where people are. ZoomInfo is a great way to get emails and phone numbers. We have unlimited access to people's cell phones, whether they like it or not, but we have a number of networks that we go to, and we're able to contact people very, very quickly without messing around with data. Data security is important to us. Confidentiality when people are candidates is really important. They don't want to give away that they're actually looking for a new situation until the time's right. We use a lot of different tools for evaluating people that go way beyond interviewing. It's important to have psychometric examinations and also do deep reference checking. Sometimes we know people that they work for and they're not references that are given, but we get information kind of quietly about the person's performance and personality. So onboarding a new hire, I don't know, is this, that's 27, so I've got 7 minutes, okay. So we'll work with the search committee to negotiate an offer, 100-day plan, do check-in calls to make sure the onboarding is going well, write up a long-term success plan and make sure that the cultural fit is right. This is just details of our insurance coverage, E&O, workers' comp, liability. Generally, we're 1/3 of first year's cash compensation. It's paid in 3 installments. We guarantee for 1 year. These are examples of some of the searches that we've done. I won't go into each one of them. You can refer to that. That's why we created it. I'll go into some detail about how some of these searches went and how many candidates had to be identified. A little bit of experience there. Usually we'll have 100 years of experience on our team. Just means we're old. So here's a case study for the CIM University president. We identified 600 people on paper. We qualified 115, got 43 responses. Not interested 24, interested in move forward 16, got down to 7 interviews. 6 were presented, 1 were chosen. Same thing with USC, almost 200 candidates. Interested were 26, interviewed 12, presented 8, finalists 1. Here's my colleague Bill. He's enjoying a holiday right now, so I'm covering for him. He's an excellent guy, done a lot of higher ed searches, specialty in HR, is HR at Disney and some tech firms. He's been a recruiter for 5 years with Stanton Chase. He's likely to be my successor if and when I ever retire. Here's me. Here's our global practice leader, Jeff. Just to get a sense of what the global practice leader does, we do 2 global meetings where 300 of us will all get together. We're going to meet in Austin in May. And we go over best practices. We discuss clients. We discuss client experiences. We discuss challenges, what's really working, what's not. We talk a lot about diversity, equity, and inclusion. We talk about the kind of clients that we want to seek. And in the case of this situation, this came across and we were approached and we're responding to it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any questions?
I have a couple questions.
Sure.
You mentioned, I heard and I saw that you have a couple of higher level education institutions that you've helped.
That's correct.
Have you ever been involved in a K-12 superintendent search?
We have not. Most of the, all the work that we're doing is college level.
Okay. And then for your other searches, not all searches are successful. Do you have a search that you can describe that was unsuccessful, and how did that turn out?
Our success rate in Stanton Chase, Los Angeles is 100%. Sometimes a client will call off a search because something happened internally. Somebody popped up that was a candidate. They decided to hire from within. There was an acquisition. You know, these are all private industry situations, but you know, in the public sphere, if we start to sense that the search is failing, we're going to add more people, add more research, and just throw more horsepower at the search so that we have adequate candidates. California is almost 40 million people. There's always more candidates. You know, even when we go to a national search, it just seems like, I don't know if it seems like there's always plentiful candidates in large cities throughout the U.S.
Thank you.
Sure.
And then last question, you kind of touched on negotiations.
Mm-hmm.
How does that transpire? How do you guys negotiate, and how much experience have you had negotiating contracts?
The process of negotiation is integrated into all the search work that we do. Within a public entity, I think that you're going to have a range, and you know, the individual that's interviewing for this role is going to understand that range from the get-go. It's going to be published on the recruitment profile. So anybody that's asking, you know, something that's outside of that range just doesn't qualify. Because when we come with a range of finalists to the table, we know that they're interested in the role. We know that they fit the budget, and that they're ready to move. So, you know, if they don't qualify under all those three, they're just disqualified, and we have to move on. And that's why sometimes you have to have 180 people that you're interviewing, because they may qualify and not interested. You know, they're interested and don't qualify. Sometimes they're asking too much.
Excuse me, real quick, just a follow up to that. So in your basic fee, does that include assisting the board in negotiating the employment agreement?
Absolutely.
Successful candidate? It does?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah, we stay involved until, you know, somebody's seated, and we stay involved after that, because about 70% of our clients are repeat clients. So we want to make sure that the job is done well and that we can earn, you know, the next search whenever it comes up.
Thank you.
Certainly.
Yes. Trustee Erickson.
First question is to, I guess, staff. Was the public given access to these proposals on the agenda or anywhere else? No. Okay.
Are you referencing that the proposals that were submitted,
The
were they made
proposals that were
available?
submitted, correct, yeah.
No, they were not.
Okay. All right, so I just want to make sure people understand the cost of these sorts of things. I'm okay, Mr. Rivera, thank you.
Wait, I'm going to ask Mr. Rivera. Mr. Rivera, is there, I mean, from my understanding from our purchasing administrator, we don't put out those proposals because then we're unfairly publicizing each other's proposal.
The intent of not publishing it, so that way that the competitors couldn't see what each other's proposals.
Right.
Just like we did in bids until it's published. And then this is the first time that we're having an open conversation. So information would be made available afterwards, but not until the board hears the information.
Right, okay.
So, I'm sorry, so after the deadline to submit, you don't publish those after the deadline to submit? You wait until after these hearings and then you allow the public to see it? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So that would be maybe potentially a reason to maybe kick over the decision. So I want to be clear, when you say 33.3%, oh, by the way, very impressive presentation, and I want to thank you. Obviously, you have a really impressive global presence, and from what I can see, the three of you that you've introduced to us really have a lot of corporate background, but no K through 12 experience. Is that fair to say?
Correct, and I guess my response would be, every search is very similar in just determining the type of network that you have to access, and you go out and you dive into that network and you understand it. I think that the understanding of college, higher education, college level would translate quite well to the leadership that we're looking for this role.
Okay, so is this the first time you're applying for a K through 12 contract?
That's correct.
Okay, so when it comes to K through 12 education as opposed to some of the corporate and university positions, I mean, you can't really get any more local than public education, right? So you're talking about engaging the local community, because this is something that there really is nothing more local than where your children go to school.
Sure. And by the way, I grew up in LA Unified School District from second grade all the way through high school.
Good. Go public education.
Yeah.
But I do think that there is a difference, and in terms of creating that candidate pool, how would you propose to create that candidate pool when you haven't done it before? Where would you go to get those candidates?
Well, it's easy. It's who the other school districts in California, for one. I mean, it's public knowledge who is in an assistant superintendent. It's public knowledge who the superintendent is. Their names are on the internet. We can find their phone number. We go out and interview them under the specs that are determined by the board and by the public, I guess, has input as well. Okay. And so it's relatively simple. We call the super challenging searches a purple squirrel, because it's sometimes, you know when you see one, but they're really, really rare. This is a job that is ubiquitous to every single school district in California.
Okay.
So you have almost infinite candidates. So it's a matter of contacting them, qualifying them, talking them through the specs and the requirements, and coming up with a short list.
How familiar are you with the landscape of superintendent turnover in the last couple of years when it comes to public education?
I imagine it's pretty high.
I'm asking, are you familiar?
I don't have a percentage of turnover, no.
Because it used to be 15%, and in the last couple of years, or last year, 2 years, it's been almost 30% that superintendents are leaving, not just retiring, but also leaving the superintendentship. So it's become a little bit more challenging in the last couple of years for, I'm sure, any number of reasons that you can imagine.
It's a very demanding role.
That is something that is, I think, probably different than in the corporate world or even at the university level. So just to be clear for the public, your fee is 33.3% of the total compensation package, meaning...
Yeah, total cash, yes, exactly.
So total compensation package is $400,000. You're going to take 33% of that.
That's correct.
Whatever that math is, $125,000 plus expenses. Or is that a flat fee? I'm asking.
Well, we're actually willing to do a flat fee, and that's something that can be negotiated. If you're interested in keeping your budget under control and have a clear understanding of the fact that there's going to be a flat fee, we're willing to do that.
And how did you come up with that number as being something
33 1/3. It's usual and customary in our business,
In the business
under
that
retained
you're doing?
search. Yeah,
Okay.
and we're overseen by the AESC, the Executive Search Consultants, and the AESC meets every year and determines that all of our work is under a consultative basis, and we're paid as we go. It's not like a headhunter type of a fee where you're throwing mud at a wall and you might get paid after you're successful. But yeah, it's all quite. They determine a very professional level of delivery of services.
I don't have any more questions.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
I have some.
Trustee Page?
Thank you for your presentation.
Sure.
As you can see, community input is really crucial in our school district, and so I was hoping you can describe a listening session and what does that entail, like surveys or in-person focus groups? Like, what does that process look like?
I think that we would go to you for some guidance on that, but it includes listening sessions, which are like focus groups, and we could develop surveys. I've done that before, where surveys could be sent out to a select number of the public and utilized as guides in how you approach this and the type of qualifications and characteristics that are desirable.
So would you create that, or like would you come to the board to request what we're looking for?
Well, yeah, it's all a matter of interacting with the board for inputs on what's been successful and how you've done that sort of thing before. But we would take it from that point and develop a survey and distribute the survey and get it back and then report to you.
Okay. So let's say you're in the middle of a search. How would you respond if a board member came to you with a specific name to consider in the pool?
Any internally generated candidates would be treated all equally the same as others. So the ones that we seek and then the ones that are generated internally would go through the same rigorous process. And I described it there. We could go into some more detail about what that looks like.
Okay, thank you. And then last question, what type of communication or research have you done in regards to our school district specifically?
We have a lot of data that I've actually picked up in the last several days that gives a pretty good overview of the demographics, and that would guide some of our search work in terms of just trying to focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion. We know that there's a huge number of schools. And that, we know the geographic boundaries, but I'm just getting to know you here as a start.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Trustee Yamasaki?
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. It
Thank
was
you very
well
much.
done. Your presentation was thorough, especially the timeline. Your experience in global and executive search is impressive. However, as my colleagues have mentioned, K through 12 is a little different. We rely on more local, maybe, and statewide candidates because the laws in California might be a little bit different than the laws in other areas as well. And so my concern is, you'll have a smaller pool to draw from. And so what kind of recruitment would you do locally, or do you use advertising, or how do you plan to publicize it?
I think in the sense of a public search, advertisement and basically posting jobs is acceptable. It's generally a practice that we don't do in the private sector, but I think it's integral to how you would approach this. And we're accustomed to going, national if that's desirable. I think that the Orange Unified School District is unique in that there's considerable participation by the public. It's affluent. It's diverse. And that's the kind of candidate pool that you're looking for, and we can find that in many cities, throughout the United States. If that's desirable, we would look in the West initially, with Western cities, and could even be expanded. Sometimes there's complications moving people in from California based on the cost of living. But I lived and worked in San Francisco for 15 years, and there's comparable cost of living up there, and that's a huge, 10 million population of, candidate pool, and, similar size school districts as Southern California.
Okay.
So, the aperture, I think, I said, kind of tongue in cheek that there's an infinite number of candidates, and it's almost true because, the number of people that we could approach that are superintendents in school districts just in California is a very large number, and if you expand it to other states,
Yeah.
That would keep you busy for a month.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. And I'm asking all candidates this information is I want to know if you had any prior business with the school district or relationships with the school district or any of the board members.
We don't.
Okay, thank you.
Just a quick question, because you touched on it, the confidentiality of potential candidates. In prior searches that we've done, the confidentiality, but also the sensitivity to the individual coming forward. Do you consider that to be very high as part of all the others things that you do?
I think that could be directed by the board, the level of sensitivity. I mean, and sometimes in situations, we have somebody sign an NDA that their candidacy has to be kept secret until there may be 3 interviews in, and then it becomes, because a lot of the references that you check are going to be at their existing job, and you have to have a thorough reference checking process. So oftentimes the confidentiality is retained until that last minute when they, it's obvious that they're going to be a candidate for the role, and they have to disclose that to their current employer.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for your presentation. I just bring it up because, if somebody starts submitting names and potential candidates and it leaks out, it could be potential detriment to the individual.
Right. Oh, no, absolutely.
Where they're coming from.
Yeah, they can get dismissed.
Exactly. So, the understanding is that this has to be highly confidential on potential candidates. So thank you.
Sure.
Anyone else? No? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you,
That
Rick.
concludes the presentation.
Certainly.
Mr. Gonzalez, is World Bridge, they're not going to be participating?
That is correct. We got information from them today that they're choosing not to participate. So I believe we're going to be moving on to Summit Search Solutions, and the team's going to be working right now to get them online because their preference was to present virtually. So that's Summit Search Solutions that's next up, and it's World Bridge partners that chose to not participate today.
Thank you.
Good evening. Can folks hear me?
Yes.
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 Okay, excellent. Good evening, board members. Is it okay if I start now?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. Good evening, board members. My name is Todd LaFreese, and I'm with Summit Search Solutions. Thank you so much for the opportunity to present to you virtually this evening. My colleague and I are juggling some life events. She unfortunately is attending a funeral of a family friend. I'm in a different type of life event. I'm on college visit tours with my 18-year-old son because he only has 27 days left to make his decision, and we need to get him to that decision point. I'm going to start a PowerPoint presentation here. Hopefully it will cooperate. And okay, I cannot see your screen, so are you able to see the cover slide of our PowerPoint?
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, so wanted to start with first, why Summit Search Solutions? We have been specializing in education searches for over 20 years, and collectively our team has led over 1,000 successful searches in the education sector. If we're awarded a contract, your project team will be myself and my colleague, Arasi Adkins. Between the two of us, we have served as senior administrators in multiple public school systems. Collectively, we have 40 years of experience in senior administrative roles. In terms of something that you're going to hear about several times this evening, is about the diversity of our candidate pool and our whole approach and belief in that. It's a strong point of pride, and it's a commitment that we make in terms of every search that we do. I also, in terms of something that I think is perhaps unique about Summit, is not only that we'll be your project team, but we'll be your exclusive project team, meaning that you would be our sole client that we're actively recruiting for. You'll get our focused attention to make sure that we understand the needs of Orange Unified School District and then work tirelessly to find candidates that fit those needs. Just in terms of some additional information, we're recognized as a top 50 search firm by Hunt Scanlon in the field of education. Our business is a certified woman business enterprise. Again, I mentioned diversity sourcing strategies is something that we do in every search. And we're a boutique firm by choice. And again, that really what we mean by that is we take on a limited number of projects so we can make sure that we give each project the time, focus, and attention that it needs. In terms of your team, again, my name is Todd LaFreese. I've been an assistant superintendent for nearly 20 years, working in 2 different school districts, one in Connecticut, as well as Chapel Hill Harbor City Schools in North Carolina. I was also, part of my responsibility, I was over human resources in both districts and have been heavily engaged and involved with multiple leadership position searches, principals, senior cabinet members, and so forth. Arasi Adkins, it would be the other person who's working on the search. Arasi, again, she has a similar amount of experience. She's more focused in the HR area. She's been an assistant superintendent of human resources in multiple school districts. She was also a vice chancellor of human resources in North Carolina A&T State University. And I think something, again, coming back to diversity of candidates, one thing that Arasi's really, really passionate about is identifying a diverse candidate pool. She is a diversity and inclusion certified recruiter. In terms of superintendent searches, this is something that Summit Search Solutions is just getting started in. We conducted our first superintendent search last summer for Guilford County Schools, which is one of the top 50 largest districts in the United States. They have 70,000 students, 126 schools. The board members were very impressed and very pleased, and they're glad to serve as references for us. And so if we get into consideration, please do reach out to them and they'll share with you how we collaborated with them, our very intentional listening to make sure that we understood what their needs were, what their community's needs were, what their stakeholders' needs were. And then in terms of how we implemented that process forward, we received 33 applications for that search, which was more than they had anticipated. It was a diverse candidate pool, and the search was successful, and their superintendent is currently there is currently there and working successfully in their district. Our second search is in the finishing processes. We are finishing the search with Asheville City Schools, which is also in North Carolina. It's a smaller district of about 5,000 students. One of the things that Asheville cited at their board meeting in terms of selecting us was what they heard from Guilford in terms of our stellar outreach efforts. One thing that we don't do, we don't wait for candidates to apply. We're going to seek them out, and we do that in a variety of ways. One of the ways that we do it that we find to be very effective is personalized outreach. And initially, when we were working with the board, we had a target of about 20 to 25 applications. In this case, we received 50 applications. 32% of the applications were candidates of color. Again, focusing on that diverse pool. Even though the search is still underway, again, I mentioned we're in the finishing stages. We've shifted to the interview process with the board now. The board chairs have shared they'd be happy to serve as a reference for us. That project should be finishing up in the next few weeks. I mentioned again building a strong, diverse candidate pool. The first thing that we do is we will be very intentional about listening to what your needs are. We're going to want to meet with you collectively. We're going to want to interview each board member individually. We're going to want to conduct surveys of your community. We could come and conduct forum focus groups because what we really want to understand is what are the strengths of Orange Unified School District? What are the areas of concern that you and your community have? What are the desired skills and characteristics in the next superintendent? And what makes Orange Unified School District such an awesome place to work, live, play, and raise a family? We need all of that information to be able to successfully create a candidate profile, job prospectus, the marketing materials that's going to be shared, and then we use that information to identify candidates in similar type districts, not only in just California, but across the country. And we reach out to them in multiple ways, whether that is through job posting boards, networking. We will identify candidates individually, and we will personally contact them and encourage them to apply. And we do that with multiple attempts. In terms of some of the results, from January 2017, we placed 230 individuals, 37% identified as Black, Indigenous, or a person of color, 52% were female, 48% male. Again, I really want to hone in on this as a point of pride for our organization. In terms of the proposed plan, it's basically a 6-step process. It starts with the preparation, which again, we need to intently listen and hear from you and your stakeholders about those needs, the concerns, the strengths, the desired characteristics, and what makes Orange Unified School District a great place. We'll create that position prospectus and marketing material, get that shared with you and approved, and then we move forward into recruitment. I mentioned our networking, our advertising, our passive candidate outreach, and then all along the way, we're monitoring the diversity of the pool, and we're taking proactive steps to ensure that you have a diverse candidate pool. When applications come in, we screen them. We first screen them to determine whether they meet the minimum qualifications or not. Those that do, we screen them to determine, do they have something in their background or experience that is aligned with what the identified needs of the board and the community are. Those candidates, Arasi and I will do a personal interview with them and write up a brief summary of what we learned in that interview. And then we open up the portal with all of the applicant materials for the board to review. I want to stress that the board will receive access to all applicants, not just those that Arasi and I have interviewed, and not just those that we would be bringing forward and recommending to you for consideration. You will have access and an opportunity to review all candidates. The board will assist the board with a decision-making criteria, which will be largely derived from the interviews that we have with you, the feedback that we get from your community, and then determine candidates to bring forward in terms of having an interview, an initial interview with you. From there, we can move forward to a finalist round, or it may be that you desire an intermediate step with another second round of interviews. We have flexibility there, and of course we can talk about that should we get offered the contract. And then ultimately we'll do deep dive in terms of reference checking and background checks, and then assist the board with finalizing the selection and negotiating a contract with a successful finalist. We have, again, tools that we can use to help. This is just on the screen an example of a tool that we use where search committees, in essence the board, is reviewing applicants and rating them in terms of who they're really excited about and would like to see, who they're interested in but maybe not particularly excited, and those candidates that they might not want to see. And this really helps facilitate a conversation. This would be a closed session type conversation with the school board to determine which candidates you wanted to bring forward for interviews and into the finalist rounds. In terms of a proposed timeline, we think we can do the search in about 15 weeks. Again, so I have I kind of have that mapped out here on the screen, but I think what we would want to first do is, again, get that initial meeting with the search committee and craft a timeline that works for you and your community. Again, both Arasi and I are longtime public educators. We know we're approaching testing season. We know we're approaching graduation season. We know we're approaching seasons where people perhaps go on summer vacations. And so we want to make sure that we develop a schedule that works for you and for your community. And that's something that we'll do in our initial intake meeting with you. I've kind of already talked about this in terms of engaging with you and the public. Again, we're going to want to meet with you, the board collectively as well as individually. We're very proactive in terms of how we communicate. We'll establish a regular check-in meeting to keep everyone up to date and up to speed in terms of where the project is. In terms of your executive staff, your administrative staff in the district, again, we have firsthand understanding of the challenges of the day-to-day operations of the school district. And so what we do our very best to do is, if we need to reach out to a senior staff member for some type of logistical need, we do it quickly, we do it efficiently, and then we take the ball and run with it and do our very best to stay out of their way. In terms of the community, I mentioned having an electronic survey. We can help with public forums. We know that getting information and feedback from your community, all stakeholders, is going to be critical. And when I mean all stakeholders, I mean all stakeholders: parents, staff, faculty on staff, your service staff, your classified staff, your bus drivers, your custodians, your parents, your students, your community groups. We want to make sure that we're reaching out to get and hear the collective voice of your community. We also know that through experience, some community members are harder to reach. And so we'll collaborate with your communications team on strategies that have worked in the past to reach out to those constituents to make sure we're able to hear their feedback and get their voices in terms of supporting the search process. Our fee, it's a flat fee. It's a $50,000 flat fee for the search. There are reimbursable expenses on top of it. It would be for running ads in perhaps Top School Jobs or on LinkedIn or some other types of routine job posting boards. There'd be travel expenses for myself and my colleague, but that in essence would be it. It's a $50,000 fee. You'd have some travel expenses and you'd have some advertising expenses. And in terms of the competitiveness of that, I think everything that I've shared in terms of our approach, the work that we're going to do for you, the fact that you are going to be our sole focus client, we're going to only be recruiting for you. I think that that's something that is different and unique about Summit. And then again, I've already highlighted a lot about our outreach efforts and our focus on obtaining a diverse candidate pool. And then in terms of contract negotiation, when it comes time to finalizing and selecting the superintendent, we'll work with you, we will work with your board attorney, and we will work with the candidate to facilitate a successful contract negotiation. We can be involved directly with it. Sometimes it's delegated to the board chair. Sometimes it gets delegated to the board attorney. We're open to what works best for you in this process. And that concludes my presentation.
Okay, questions?
I have a couple questions.
Trustee Minor?
Hi, thank you so much for your time. You mentioned that you and your partner both have a lot of experience in schools personally, and you discussed how you kind of do a boutique search. So you would only be, like if we hired you, you would only be working for us. Does that include other searches that you might be doing at the same time? If it's not a superintendent search, it would just be for us?
This would be the only search that myself and Arasi will be working on. So there will not be other searches that we're engaged with.
Okay. And then I asked the other candidate this question as well. So not all searches are successful, and I know you've only recently finished one successful so far and working on the second. Was the whole process pretty smooth? You didn't have to start over with new candidates? How did that transpire? So
both, well, the one that concluded last August was very smooth. The board reviewed the candidates that we had brought forward. They narrowed the pool down, conducted interviews, and then made a decision, successful contract negotiation, and moved it forward. Asheville, again, isn't complete yet. We're kind of getting into that phase. But the candidate pool that they had, it was a very competitive candidate pool, and they're in a very, very good position with the types of candidates that they are having to choose from. And so I'm very confident for them to have a successful search. I will share from my professional history. We have had unsuccessful searches. I've dealt with that before as an assistant superintendent in Chapel Hill Carborough. We had a really important high school principal position that when we got far into the process and had conducted that first round of initial interviews, we knew we would not have a successful candidate long-term for that school. And we made the hard decision to open school with an interim because we knew what was best for the school. And so that's what you're going to get from Arasi and I. If we find that we're getting into the process and you're not having the quality of candidates that are aligned with the needs that were identified through the forums and through your feedback, we will go back to the drawing board. It makes no sense to move forward unless you have viable candidates. It is so important. It's a critical leadership position. Just like I mentioned, that high school position was a critical leadership position. And we were not afraid to say, nope, this isn't working. We need to take a step back to move a step forward.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone else? Trustee Erickson?
Thank you very much for your presentation. I love everything you have to say. I think that I'm very impressed by your commitment to diversity, and I know that in your proposal, you also talk about having some experience with Spanish-speaking communities. Is that right? Did I get that right?
Yes, one of the things that I led at Chapel Hill Carborough City Schools was we created the district's first ever bilingual elementary school, which is a bilingual Spanish school, and greatly expanded the number of opportunities for English learners in the district.
Okay.
And to do that required us to be working with that community. We had outreach sessions as we were bringing recommendations forward with the local Latino community centers. Of course, at every meeting, we had interpreters available to help make sure that people understood what was being discussed. Our surveys, when we send out electronic surveys, we'll talk with your staff to find out what languages those surveys need to go out in. I think in Guilford, we sent out the survey, and I think in 6 or 7 different languages to meet the needs of their community. And so we're committed to do that.
In terms of costs then, the $50,000 is a flat fee, and is that pretty much industry standard for these kinds of searches, is you give a flat fee proposal?
So we offer a flat fee based on, I'm not sure what the industry standard is, but I would say that our fee is commensurate with the amount of work, time, energy, and effort that we're going to put into the search, and for again the items that I highlighted in terms of our whole approach to sourcing candidates, to making sure you have a diverse candidate pool, and so forth. It's a flat fee with reimbursables for travel expenses and advertising expenses.
Were background checks also additional costs?
No, those are included in the fee.
Okay, great. Thank you.
And our fee also comes with a guarantee. And so if the search, if the candidate doesn't work out for any reason in the first year, we will redo the search for no fee, just the reimbursable expenses.
Got it. Okay, so I'll just tell you now my concerns. Do you have any experience in K through 12 placements in California at all?
No.
Okay, so this would be your first sort of foray into California?
Yes, on the K-12 on a K-12 search. Yes.
Okay. What have you done outside of the K through 12 search in California?
Summit has placed presidents, vice presidents, vice chancellors in several universities in California. They're highlighted in our proposal, but just some of them off the top of my head: Pacific Oaks College, Saybrook University, University of Redlands. Those are 3 that come to mind.
Okay.
But they're highlighted in our written proposal that we submitted.
Okay. So, I mean, I know that since you place candidates in public schools, that it's a very sort of personal process, right? And how do you propose familiarizing yourself with those candidates? Is that, you said that you have sort of this passive advertising where you put it up on your website, but then you also have advertising, and then you also just reach out and call people? Is that right?
When we reach out, we typically do it via email, again, being respectful of folks' time. Cold calls in public ed typically don't go over well. But what we will do, again, is we will, first what we need to do is understand what the specific needs, strengths, and challenges are in your district, so we can craft that position profile. Once we have that identified, we are going to look for similar districts across the country that are facing similar types of challenges. Then we're going to look for candidates within those districts that have the skills, qualifications, experiences that are aligned with the position profile. And then we will go and we will do that passive outreach to them. It could be through networking. It could be we send them an email and invite them to apply. It could be we send them an email and just say, hey, would you like to talk about it? Is it something that you're interested in?
Okay.
And then both Arasi and I do have a network of colleagues in other states that we will call on and say, hey, we've got this position. Are there folks that you could recommend to us that we should reach out to? So those are the types of activities that we'll be doing.
Okay. Because I do think there's some concern. Obviously, you have to have the trust of the district that you're working for, but you also have to be able to have the trust of those candidates. And so that concerns me a little bit if you don't have the experience in California to be able to get those quality candidates and bring them into us, because they may or may not, they won't know you. So go ahead.
So I think some of the candidates in the Asheville pool, the 50 candidates, some are candidates that do know me. The majority are candidates that did not know me prior to the search.
Okay. That's it. Thank you.
Anyone else? Trustee Yamasaki?
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to expand on the $50,000 that your fees are $50,000 and reimbursable expenses. How much do you anticipate the reimbursable expenses will be? Like, what's your average or?
So for the, I have not done a budget estimate in terms of travel. I'd need to be able to get a good sense of what's going to work for the board in terms of the timeline. I mentioned that's something we do right at the beginning to identify the timeline and what the necessary activities were. And so once we had that in place, I think I could comment a little bit more on travel expenses. But in terms of advertising expenses, you're probably looking at less than $5,000.
Okay. So maybe, I mean, obviously it would be dependent on how many visits you would come and how many people. So I understand that, but I just, don't like leaving certain expenses open-ended like that.
So essentially it would be airfare expense. We do not fly first class. We fly coach. And we would be staying in reasonable hotels, Hampton Inns, things like that. We're again, former educators of public school systems. We understand how important it is to be good stewards of public money.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I'm kind of getting a flashback. I felt like I asked this question before. I want to also know, and I've asked this with every search firm here, do you have any prior business or anyone at your company have any prior business or relationship with the district or anyone on the board?
No, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? I've got a question. Now, the reimbursable travel expenses, this is travel from North Carolina, right? That's where you're located?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Thank you. I just want to get that clarified. Thank you. Anyone else?
I have a question, Mr. Ledesma.
Okay. Trustee Page?
So when you were describing working with the public and the different populations, including different languages, what stood out to me the most was that you were willing to interview students. Can you describe, specifically what kinds of students you're going to interview? Does it go all the way down to, primary, or are you focusing on high schoolers? Have you done that before?
What we did in Asheville, we did middle school and high school. We did that through electronic surveys, but there were also some forums where students did come and speak at forums. Again, most of them were middle and high school in terms of the connections there.
Was that a decision by the board or the school district, or was that a decision made by?
That was a school district decision. They specifically wanted to engage their middle schoolers and their high schoolers.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any further questions, anyone? Thank you, sir. That
Okay,
concludes
thank you so much,
presentation.
everyone. Have a great evening.
You as well. Mr. Gonzalez, the McPherson Group.
Yes, Mr. President, we're going to get them set up.
Max, do you have the name tag? That one needs to be switched out. Thank you.
Okay.
Welcome.
Thank you very much. I'm ready whenever you are.
I think we're ready. Go right ahead. Proceed.
Wonderful, thank you. First of all, I'd like to say thank you for the opportunity to come and present and share some information about McPherson and Jacobson with you. My name is Dr. Michelle Bowers, and I'm the proud consultant, one of the proud consultants that would be serving as a lead for your team and the superintendent search should we be selected. I wanted to share information focusing on the 5 primary areas that we were given, so I wanted to make sure that I covered that within the time. I'm watching that clock very closely, within the time that we have allocated. Again, I just want to make sure that throughout the presentation you can see that we're focusing on those 5 priority areas. The first one was experience and qualifications. So just wanted to share with you, in front of you, you are, I think you have been provided a book that shares some information about our experience and qualifications. McPherson and Jacobson is a CSBA partner. So that's the California School Boards Association, and we have been identified as a preferred partner for superintendent searches. And that's based on our experience that the consultants bring to the table. I myself have over 30 years of experience in education. I've served as a classified person. I've served as a teacher, site administrator, district administrator, and most recently served as superintendent in Lancaster School District here in California for 10 years. I just recently retired, yay for me. And now I have an opportunity to do things that I love to do. Not that I didn't love doing that, but I get to focus all my time on doing searches, supporting, training, executive leadership. So I really enjoy doing those things, and proud to be part of the McPherson and Jacobson team. The other lead member that would be responsible for your search is Mr. Ben Johnson. He has been a member of the Mac and Jake team for about, well, since 2014, so about 9 years. But he's also been a board member. So he's been a board member at Alfred, and then he's also serves on the Riverside Community College Board right now. So you're getting, with Mac and Jake, you would be getting experience from a board member perspective and lens, and experience from a California administrator perspective and lens. I continue to stay very actively involved in everything California, so I'm continue to be a member of the Association of California School Administrators, supporting all the work that they do, supporting the work and working closely with CALSA and CAPL, which CALSA is the California Association of Latino School Administrators. I also serve as the president for CASA, which is the California Association of African American Superintendents and Administrators. So I am very actively involved in what's going on in California and have a very close connection and network with many superintendents as well as potential administrators that are seeking superintendencies. Let's see, we have, one of the reasons that we are a preferred partner for CSBA is because of not only the experience that we have, but the effort and the work that we put into making sure that you have a comprehensive search. One of the things that we know that it's important is not that you want to do this over and over and over again. So our goal is to make sure that we not only seek out the best and the brightest people that have the skill, that have the experience, that have the knowledge in how to lead a school district, but also looking at the district's criteria that has been established so that we make sure to work to get the right fit for the district and the community. So what are your needs? So we're going to put a lot of time and effort into our stakeholder meetings, establishing criteria through conversations with the board. But the reason I bring that to your attention, I know that that was one of the criteria that we'll be covering in a minute when we go through our phases, but that is important because of the retention rate. So when we talk about getting someone in for you that's going to be the right fit, that has the experience, the skills, the knowledge, that's important because you want someone that's going to be here for a while, that's going to have the time and opportunity and commitment to lead the district. And you'll see our retention rates. Over 85% of the people that we place stay for 5 years, at least 5 years, 60% for the past 10 years, and almost 45% go past 15 years in a certain district. So we have found out the secret sauce to making sure we get the right people in the right place to do the right work. Uh-oh, wait a minute. It's not me? Okay. He's coming, thank you. Okay. There we go. Thank you very much back there. It's nice to have IT on my side. One of the things, as I was just saying, and you can read the bullets there, I'm not going to read everything to you, but just want to emphasize again, we focus on recruiting talented people. That's our big job. We have a process. I'm sure everyone that you speak with has a process that's going to be somewhat similar, but we also have the network of people, not just in California, but we have consultants nationwide, and your search information would be shared with those consultants. More importantly, or equally important, shall I say, is that we have a strong network with administrators. Because we have so many people that go through our system, we already have a bank of administrators that we know are looking. We know what their qualities, their qualifications are, what their characteristics are. So we have people that we will be able to tap on the shoulder, that we can call, that we can let them know and make sure they're aware of your search. We also have our website, and as a partner, we have a lot of people, especially this time of year, that go to McPherson and Jacobson website to see what openings are available. So on average, we get about 200,000 hits a month. So we know that people look to us, rely on us for potential openings and information on what's available. And we like to be able to support them and be able to support you. The next two priorities that we were asked to really focus on were the plan, strategy, and timeline. And I'm putting number 2 and 3 together because they kind of overlap. So the plan, the strategy, and the timeline, as well as the approach to actively engage all invested educational partners. So how do we make sure that your stakeholders are involved before, during, and after the search? Oh, it's really loving me tonight. Okay. Oops. Okay. It would appear that we're missing something there. But we have 5 phases to our superintendent search. I was going to say it's in there. For the audience, there's a whole list of the 5 phases on the right-hand side of this slide. I'm not sure why it didn't show up here. But we will walk through the 5 phases anyway. So phase 1 is initiating the search process, which you're beginning to do at this point. But we know, I'm sure you're very aware, based on where we are, there is a sense of urgency. I'm making an assumption your goal is to have someone in place for July, okay. So we have an aggressive timeline, but that's okay because you will see that we have a draft of how we can get that done. So as soon as the board makes the selection, then we would sit down and schedule some dates to meet with you so that we can identify first and foremost, what is your criteria? That's important so that we can put that brochure together and give information, share information with candidates that might be interested in the position. So we want to make sure that we communicate, and over-communicate. Bless you, not only with you, but with your community and with our external community so that we can make sure that those qualified applicants have the information that they need to start looking into and thinking about Orange Unified School District. The stakeholder voice, which was definitely one of your criteria that you want to know more information about, and I understand this is an important one, I believe, for Orange because we want to make sure that we have a transparent process. And the communication is going to be key with that. We work with the board to identify all of your invested partner, your stakeholder groups. We have obviously the ones that you have your parents, you have your association leadership, you have a student board, advisory board, so we would reach out to them, but also work with you to see if there are other groups, focus groups that you want and need us to meet with. Orange Unified serves a lot of different cities, so it's going to be critically important that we connect with you to make sure that we are communicating with those cities and those city leaders and those communities because each community, each city is slightly different. So we understand that, we respect that, and we want to give that the attention that it deserves. Also, the other thing that is important is that you are a preschool through 12th grade district. So sometimes I understand the different levels have different priorities, so we want to make sure that we identify any focus groups or provide opportunities to make sure that elementary, the folks that focus on pre-K through 5th or 6th grade, they have certain things that are going to be critically important to them, middle school as well, and then the same for your high school students and their care providers as well. So we are looking at all of those different pieces to make sure that we are being mindful and intentional about how we reach out to the stakeholders. We do that in person, we do that through virtual meetings, opportunities, and we do that through surveys. So there will be a survey on your webpage, there will be surveys on our webpage. People will have multiple opportunities to provide input. And those 4 bullets that you see under the first bullet, each of the stakeholder groups are going to basically get the same 4 focus questions because we want to compare apples to apples and be able to gather information and gather the data. Tell us the good things about your community. Tell us the good things about your school district. What are the issues the incoming superintendent should be aware of as he or she comes into the district? And what characteristics should the new superintendent have to be successful? These stakeholder meetings are listening opportunities for us. So we gather this information and then we comprise a full stakeholder summary and report for the board. We share, we kind of aggregate all of that data and information. We prepare that report, we share it with you, and then we'll share it with your community as well. So that'll be something that you can put on your website and people will have access to seeing that. The promotional brochure and all of the advertising material that goes along with the superintendent search, of course, we will have some beautiful brochures that we will publish. We will have information available online. It'll be on our website. There's a multitude of associations that we work with that will make sure that they publish it as well. As I mentioned a few earlier, we will work with the folks, whoever your point of contact is here in the district, to make sure that you have adequate information on your own website. And then we will also work nationwide with our consultants to make sure that they have information, because sometimes they know people that are looking to relocate that have the experience and might be a good fit for your community and your district. Advertising and, advertising we talked about, and applying. we actively recruit applicants. So we pick up the phone. We have tons of applicants here, or tons of consultants. We have about 100 consultants nationwide and about 25 in California. So we have a very strong network, and we will actively be recruiting applicants for your position. The screening and selection process, once it has closed, the consultants team, so we have a full team behind it. It's not just Mr. Johnson and myself, but we have a full team that we work with, and we'll be screening all of the applications to make sure that they meet the criteria that the board has identified. We want to make sure that we take a look at that, how well that matches, how well they fit, so that we can prepare what is called a short list for you. And on that short list, we're going to be able to kind of screen in folks that meet all of that criteria and would be a strong consideration for you. And we'll make sure that we provide that information. And then we come to the board and share information on all the applicants, as well as why some are being recommended to be moved forward and considered for an interview process. At the end of the day, while we make a short list and provide the board information on all applicants as well as a recommendation, it is the board's decision as to who they will interview. So if you say, no, we don't want this person, or you say, yes, let's bring this person in, then we make that happen for you. The interview preparation itself, prior to the board actually doing the interview, when we have that short list to share with you, we'll have a short video. We'll have those recommended applicants do a short video so that you can put a face to the name and to the paper. And they'll all be addressing the same questions, but you'll have an opportunity to at least see and hear from them a little bit before you make a final decision about who you will interview. Mac and Jake will work with you to identify interview questions. So we have some, of course, that we would share with you, but then we also work with you to see if there's special areas that you want to focus on so that we can make sure to craft customized questions if there is something specific to your district that you want to make sure that we include or address as part of the interview process. We also do a full criminal, financial, and credential verification and background. I'll throw in social media in there as well. We do all the searches and scanning the internet for everything, all the information that we want to make sure we're aware of, so that when we bring a person forward for your consideration, you have all the information that you need to make informed decisions. We will schedule, as we said, it's a pretty aggressive timeline. Inside of your packet, there is a draft timeline of how we can help you get to your goal of having someone in place by July 1. So feel free to take a look at that. But as you can see, there's lots of work that goes into the superintendent search process, but we're happy to be your partner in this process. And then last but not least, the final phase that I'll be talking about as far as the steps to success is the transition. We don't just do the interview and then walk away. We are going to actually make sure that we work with you, we work with the applicant. We announce we want to celebrate with you. So we're going to work with you to publish something about your new superintendent so that your community knows who was selected. And then if for some reason, which this rarely happens, but if for some reason the person that you select does not work out, there is a 2-year guarantee and we will do the search over again for you. The timeline I shared with you, that's inside of your packet there. Satisfaction guaranteed. We talked about the 2-year guarantee, and the cost for all of the services, phases 1 through 5, would be $34,000, not to exceed $34,400. And that includes up to that amount of advertising, all of the in-person, the webinars. By the way, we do English and Spanish, so we will do the translation. And if there is another language that we need to consider, then we will work with the board to identify what that language is as well. I get extra time. I need some help. It's not me. Well, I feel better. No worries. Okay. Final priority that we were asked to make sure we talked about this evening was about a contract. And it's really liking me. What we do, okay, thank you very much. I'm missing a slide, but that's okay. You probably have it in your packet there.
Yep.
One of the things that we make sure that we do is give you the information so that you can make informed decisions about negotiating a contract with your new superintendent. We strongly advise that you we'll give you sample salaries, we will give you sample contracts, we will give you, so you'll see when I say sample salaries, what are districts, neighboring districts, paying superintendents, as well as districts your size in other places, maybe beyond. So you'll have information that you need to make informed decisions about your negotiation process, but we strongly recommend that you work closely with your district attorney, legal firm, to actually conduct the negotiations for you. So we work with the board on the process, but not actually negotiating a contract. Okay. And that slide works. Okay, so if there are questions, I am happy to entertain any questions that you might have, but I will be here through the rest of the evening if you would like to call me back.
Okay, any questions? Ms. Minor?
Hi, thank you
Hello.
so much for your time.
You're very welcome.
I heard you say that you have a full team that would be working with us. Do you have kind of an estimate about how many people would be working with us if we chose you?
Well, as I said, you'll get the two leads, myself and Mr. Johnson, and behind the scenes, we have about 5 people that work with the online surveys, that work with translation, that work with developing your brochures. I have skills, but there's certain things that's not my lane. So we have people that take care of that and work with the firm to take care of that for you. And they've done it for we've done it for so many school districts. We have it down to a science, so that'll be fine.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And then my last question is, how does your firm ensure a fair and equitable search process
For
selecting a superintendent?
That's one of the reasons that 5-phase approach comes in handy, because we really do make sure that, thank you for asking the question, we really do make sure that we're very transparent about the process. So you don't just see us here once in a blue moon. We'll be communicating with the board on a regular basis, probably every 2 weeks, just to let you know this is where we are in the process, this is how many applications we've received, and we will communicate with you. We can do that virtually, we can do that if you need us to be in person, we can mix it up, do some in person, do some virtually, but then we can also provide you a written report via email, just kind of give you an update with that. We can also, a lot of what we talked about as we go through these steps, we'll be able to share things and information with you that you can post on your website, so you can keep your community informed as well. Part of the interview process, the board has an opportunity to make some decisions as far as whether or not you would like to consider, some districts do, some districts don't, consider a community panel as well. Usually it's the board members that conduct the interview. However, some communities or some boards would also like to have a community panel, which is separate. And if you choose to have a separate community panel as part of the interview process, then those individuals would be individuals selected or identified by the board. They would sign a confidentiality statement because that's always something that we want to make sure is in place. And then the information that is provided from that team of people in the community is information to inform. So they don't rank, they don't make a recommendation. They give information or feedback on each individual, and then that information is shared with the board. And that information can be used to inform the board's decision. So we want to make sure it's very clear that they're not making a recommendation of who to hire, just kind of the pros and cons, strengths, and any areas of concerns or questions that they might have on each of the applicants. One of the other opportunities that you have as a board is to, if you'd like to go to your finalist, to the district of your finalist, you can do that as well. We can make arrangements for that to happen. Some districts do, some districts don't. So it's just something that you would have to determine, but it is an option that would, an opportunity that would be available to you.
Sorry, I do have one more question. So I did notice in the list of consultants that there's a consultant listed that we recently had as an interim superintendent.
Oh, okay.
How does that work with conflict of interest?
One-
And are they currently still employed as a consultant?
I am not sure who you're referencing, so what we would do, obviously, is work with you, and then that, we would remove that person from any direct communication or contact with your district on this search.
Okay, thank you.
So it's I know it's not me. So
I don't know you.
and you're basing that off of the list, not Mr. Johnson, correct?
The one in the packet, yeah.
Okay, fine. Yeah, we would just communicate that with us, and we would make sure that that would not be a conflict.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. Very comprehensive. Like the thoroughness of it. And you touched on it as well. I've been asking about confidentiality and the sensitivity, as you well know.
Yes.
From your experience of being a superintendent and also now searching for superintendents. But
Correct.
And I put a lot of emphasis on it because it can ruin people's careers.
Mm-hmm.
And people need to understand that. It's like when names are submitted and it's brought forward to the board, it's very sensitive and confidential. And so I just want to, it's more of a comment than it is maybe a question, but I did like what you said about almost like NDAs or confidentiality agreements, call them, whatever they are, in that manner.
As when people decide to apply, that information only goes to the district and to the search firm, to our firm. So we'll do the screening process, and then we have a communication with just the board members about who has applied, as well as the short list. So only the board will be aware of that information. Now, once we do the short list, we do reach out to the people that are used as references to make sure that we check those references, and we notify the applicants, of course. We notify the applicants if they're going to be recommended for an interview. We do all of that before we actually move them forward for an interview recommendation. We check all of the references, but up until that time, everything is confidential.
Okay. And as Ms. Minor stated, because, allegations are what they are, it is mentioned that individual listed in here, Mr. Velasquez, at one point had worked for your firm.
Okay.
And I do not believe he still works there. I'm not sure.
I am not sure, but I would definitely find out, and we would address that accordingly.
Okay. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
And if you're aware of myself reaching out to your firm in any way prior to this interview?
No, I have not had an opportunity to meet or speak with any of you lovely people prior to this evening.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Trustee Erickson?
Sure. Congratulations on your retirement.
Thank you.
That's exciting.
It is.
Yeah. So one of the things, just for the public so they know, you had mentioned your fee is a flat fee of $28,500 with a $6,000 allowance, roughly. So the cap is $34,400, and it could be less if there's less expenses, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And I did a search of other districts just to be sure, and 28,500 seems to be the industry standard. It's what Capo paid their search firm, it's what Tustin paid their search firm, and what your bid is, Westminster paid a little bit less. So that seems to be kind of the consistent amount. Is that fair to say?
That is fair to say. It is definitely in the ballpark. It varies a little bit based on the size of the district and the size of the search. So some districts want a lot more with the stakeholders. So with the stakeholder input. So if there's a lot more meetings, a lot more advertising involved, then it could be a little bit higher. If districts start earlier and want a very long extended period for the position to fly, then those agencies charge more. So it just varies, but the 28.5, 28.8 figure is usually a good starting point average that you'll see.
Okay, well, that is the proposal. Is that what it is?
That's what it is. That is what it is.
Just want to make sure.
That is
All right.
what it is, not to exceed the 34.4.
Okay. I do like the fact that, okay, so you are pretty much brand new to this search. Have you done a search yet, or will this be your first one?
No. I've actually done San Bernardino.
Okay.
And Mr. Johnson lives in Riverside area, so he is not too far from here. And I drove out here and it took me about 3 hours, so not.
You can drive, you don't have to fly?
I don't have to fly. I don't have to fly. So we are both very, very close. Not a problem.
Okay. And like you said, Mr. Johnson has about 9 years' experience, and then you're a little bit newer. And in reading his list of districts, he had quite a few that he had placed superintendents with.
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And the two of you, have you worked together yet?
We have. We actually worked together on San Bernardino, and we've worked together on some other projects, but not searches.
Okay. How many searches are you currently involved in?
Actually, I have 2 other presentations, but we have not been confirmed.
Okay. So you can devote time to us?
You've got all my attention.
Yay. And as far as, okay, so this issue has come up with regard to potential conflict. So we do have a past with your firm, and one of the questions that was asked is, had you been let go by any districts in the past 5 years? And the answer, I think, was just that there was a no-cause release by San Diego, maybe?
Not San Diego, but it was in
What was it?
Fontana.
I'm sorry. But we did have an issue about 6 years ago. I was not on the board, so I am not familiar, but do you have any history or do you know anything about that?
I do not. I'm unaware of that, but I will find out.
Okay. And with regard to the individual that we were talking about, you are clear that, so this person is listed as a current California consultant in your proposal. So we'd want to make sure that that was clear, that that conflict of interest doesn't exist.
Right. I will find out, and I am happy to provide the information back to the board, whether or not the person is still a consultant, but I can, if that person is a consultant, I can guarantee you that person, there would not be a conflict, that person would not be involved in your search whatsoever.
And no communication?
No.
Okay. You said that you have a bank of administrators. I think one of the concerns I guess I have is making sure that we're getting fresh people in and not just going to a bank of administrators, because I think that that can be problematic and may have been problematic in the past. Can we be assured that that is not the case, that we're really going out and doing a fresh search?
Oh, we're definitely going out and doing a fresh search. When I say we have a bank of administrators, there are lots of administrators that have applied for the various positions throughout California. So we keep that information and we connect with them. We've been in contact with them. So we do communicate with them back and forth, and we will make sure that they are aware. But the advertising that we do and the sending it out, utilizing all of the other organizations in education, it's going out, you're going to have a mass marketing approach.
Okay. And the fact that you have a lot of searches that you've either done recently or currently doing in California specifically, in looking, it looks like you have maybe a 12% market share of the California business of superintendent searching. Is that about right?
You're good with your statistics. Yeah.
I like to do research.
Yes,
I'm a nerd.
we do.
So with that though, does that what advantage does that give you? You think?
I think it gives us the advantage of, number one, people go to us. So your applicants, your qualified applicants and candidates rely on McPherson and Jacobson to be out there networking and in the know about what's going on in California, what's available, and they trust us. So we have relationships throughout with AXA, with CSBA, with CASA, with CALSA, with CAPL. We have a lot of relationships and networks that we can pick up the phone and say, hey, I need you to post this. I need you to talk to your people in your network and see if there's someone that would be a good fit for this position. Let me send you this brochure. So what advantage does it have? I can share with you, I recently retired. If I didn't believe in the work that we're doing, I wouldn't be here.
Okay. I mean, I think that's important in K through 12, especially now when we have so many superintendents leaving.
Yes.
That there's some trust there in your organization. And so I think that is what I'd be looking for with your references and things like that as well.
Definitely.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? Ms. Trustee Yamasaki?
Thank you. I have a couple of questions. Thank you for your thorough presentation.
You're welcome.
It's evident that McPherson and Jacobson has extensive experience in the K through 12 arena. You'd mentioned that you would bring a short list to the board. How short is short? Like what numbers are we looking at?
The short list would probably be, it could be anywhere from 10 to 15 applicants.
Okay.
And
I'm glad to hear that, actually, because I thought to,
Well, no, that 10 to 15, and from there, you can narrow it down maybe further to 6 to 8.
So the 10 to 15 would be the videos
Yes.
that you were talking about?
Correct.
And then from those videos, we can narrow it down to 6 to 8?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. I just wanted to make sure that was clear.
Yes.
Well, transparency, integrity are key for our community. Trustee Ortega asked, but I will expand on it. And I asked every search firm, do you or Mr. Johnson personally have any relationship with the district or any board members?
No, I can say without a doubt, definitely no for me. And I spoke with him earlier, all weekend, and he does not have any, to my knowledge, he does not have any personal experience with anyone, any of the board members or anyone in the district.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any more questions? I've got one. You do the criminal, financial, and credential verification background check.
Yes.
Do you do any psychological, like the Myers-Briggs or anything like that? Do you do any of that kind of?
We do not.
Okay.
We do not at this time.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And okay, so but you, Trustee Erickson spoke about the network. So it's really, I mean, you have a network which are just basically contacts of folks that are looking, but then you will also, it'll be a combination of networking and advertising.
Correct.
That will bring us the top candidates.
Yes.
And the potential for you getting some good candidates is the fact that your firm is such a successful firm in California, and so administrators gravitate to your firm to work with them.
To seek openings, yes.
Knowing the size and effectiveness.
Yes, and we advertise in adjoint, so they see our openings, they see what openings and searches that we're conducting, so they're very familiar. We have name recognition, we have a very strong reputation with organizations, but absolutely with applicants and those considering.
And I also saw that your timeline is 90 days, and your costs are in line. So my thinking is that the level of efficiency in terms of how you have a tight process, and you just kind of work that process and get it done in those 90 days.
We do. So when I said earlier, I'm at your disposal, we have an aggressive timeline, and Mr. Johnson and myself looked at it, we spoke about it, and we're committed to getting it done for you.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? Thank you. That concludes the presentation. And that we're looking at is hazard.
Yes, and we'll get them set up right now.
All right, good deal.
Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Whenever you're ready.
All right, members of the board, Mr. President, community, viewing audience, my name is Makai Ali, and I'm a lead associate with Harriet Young and Atia. I'm very grateful to be here today. I look forward to delving into a discussion with respect to Orange Unified Superintendent Search. The search team, our pictorials are illustrated. Dr. Valerie Pitts is a retired superintendent, spent decades in the superintendency in Northern California, currently a professor at the California State University, San Francisco, and then of course, I've served in a governing capacity on a school board in Los Angeles County for well over, I can't believe I admit this, 15 years, 16 years. I've been on the board a very long time. So I've sat in your role on several occasions and understand what it means to hire a superintendent. One of the most important roles, other than improving a balanced budget and holding folk accountable, is hiring a superintendent to lead the local education agency. About the firm, 35 years of executive search experience, rural, urban, suburban, very much determined and committed to equity with respect to ensuring that we bring forth candidates that represent the community. Research and analytics, we utilize such tools in order to synthesize, to ensure that we are bringing forth an applicant that is an appropriate fit. Local teams, as well as an ability to recruit nationally. And so with respect to our process, this is going to be a very condensed timeline. Again, within 90 days or so, we're pretty much in April, and you want to get somebody in before July 1, preferably, considering the fact that if you poach a superintendent from a neighboring district, they would need time to be able to provide notification. So you'd really want to have this search done, to be very honest, within 70 to 75 days. You have to have transition. Your deputy, I believe, is your current interim. Is it, the interim is?
Assistant superintendent.
So you do want to be able to have that transition time. You're currently in the LCAP process, in the budgetary process. So there's a lot of moving parts going on. And so you want to be able to condense that. Community engagement is very essential and key. Just to be very honest, you may not have a tremendous amount of time to hold community forums throughout the entire school district. This is not a very small district, so you'd have to commit a tremendous amount of time to that. Utilizing an online platform might be a great way in order to capture the voice of your very diverse community. Now, these numbers, the weeks 3 to 4, 6 to 8, et cetera, that can all be pulled in and condensed depending on, but this is pretty much the signature process. We engage, we recruit, we select, we transition. Again, we're saying 90 days, but this has to be at least 70 to 75 days, an aggressive recruitment. You can post, and actually you can post throughout all the various organizations, but this is going to have to be some very aggressive engagement on the ground, boots on the ground. We would assess and talk with members of the board and the executive cabinet. Let me just jump to, I'm gonna come back. This is the engagement phase. We'd interview the board, we'd interview the executive cabinet, and we'd interview stakeholders by way of online engagement. After we've done that, we'd have an opportunity to ascertain the type of superintendent you'd want, right? Now, I'm not oblivious to the politics of Orange as well as of Orange County, as San Diego, Riverside, et cetera. I'm from Southern California. So the objective is really to find a superintendent who can work with all sides and respect the will of the board, whatever the decisions the board take vis-a-vis policy, respect it and implement it, but do it in a way to ensure that populations and their needs are met, all right? So again, I'm not gonna sit here and placate the situation, okay? We know what it is, and so the objective, you have to find somebody who is an appropriate fit. We're not gonna take someone from a part of California that just simply would not align. It just wouldn't make any sense. This is the draft timeline. So the draft timeline, board approved April 5th. Again, this is draft. We can pull this forward. We're basing this assumption on a July 1st start date. We'd have to probably bring this forward a little bit. We would move very aggressively on advertising. We would start advertising immediately. We'd work with the various stakeholders to develop a comprehensive leadership profile report, which would be submitted to the board as well as the general community. The leadership profile report is essential in informing the overall search process, but making certain that the applicant understands what the community says is the community's voice. We know that this is the board's decision, but it's extremely important for the community's voice to resonate, and that would be done based upon a comprehensive leadership profile report. Now, if an applicant fails to review that report, it's evident because within the overall process and our pre-screening, we would know this person is not an appropriate fit for this district. Again, stakeholder engagement is key, critical, and essential. We'll drop down to the board identifying applicants. Now, members of boards, I've been doing several different searches. I recently completed the Bellflower Unified School District search, currently doing the Yorba Linda search. And I deploy and employ a different type of a strategy. Perhaps if the board is opposed to such, then we could do a traditional strategy. I like to keep the process confidential all the way to the day of interviews. So nobody is, not that they would do this, nobody's leaking or slipping any information out to anybody. You have to protect the sanctity of the process. If you're looking at a current seated superintendent, you have to respect the current contract because their board might not even know they're looking. Very important. These are people's lives. So if the board would agree, because the board would be hiring HYA and me as the lead consultant and to assist with this process, if you wanted to go with a traditional way, sure. The board would have access to every single applicant based upon even how we tier them, and at which point we'd proffer them for interview. But again, because it's such a tight search, I could bring you 15 people. I'm not gonna sit there and tell you a lie. You're not gonna get 30, 40 applicants. It's a tight timeline. So to bring you 15 people, you may get 15 people who apply. The objective is to really go out and strategically find either seated superintendents or deputies who have worked in a district this size and complexity. You got 39, 41 or so schools, 22+ thousand students, 50+% Latino. You got about 2% Black. I'm cool with that. 20% or 26% white. So you have to get someone who's worked in this with this demographic. And this is not a starter district, so you're not going to get somebody who's coming in as this their first rodeo. It's too complex. It's too many cities involved. The board is too large, right? So again, these are factors that one must consider when looking at applicants. Because I've been on a board for many years, I could tell you off the bat, if I wouldn't want them, then I definitely wouldn't bring them to you, because I'm not going to sit and tell you every superintendent who applies for a job, they're qualified, because many of them are not. It's very evident when you look at these test scores throughout California, pre-COVID as well as post. So it's very important, again, to utilize an aggressive timeline, to utilize the leadership profile report, to interview the board, to interview your executive cabinet folks confidentially, to be able to bring forth a voice to be able to help to inform the overall process. So research-based stakeholder survey, we would utilize an online survey similar to this, which would then come back to the board at a subsequent date. This allows us to look at what every aspect of the community. You'd be very surprised what your students believe or your parents believe about your district versus what your teachers or your administrators would believe. This is a phenomenal way to be able to capture everyone's voice so that the superintendent or the aspirant would know exactly the areas in which they may want to focus on, in addition to all of the other statutory areas of major concern, right? It's very important to ensure that the community's voice is heard. And then this is just an example of some of the surveys that we use. And of course, if we hire you, have an opportunity to also receive very similar data. This is extracted from the leadership profile. You're looking at the various constituent groups. We look at vision and values. We look at community engagement, general district management. These are areas of key concern, and we want a superintendent to walk in the door in a prime position to be able to help move the district forward. And as luck would have, okay, I'm clicking it, there we go. This is the copy of the leadership profile report district we recently did a search for in Colorado. So this is just an example of how the leadership profile report will look. Each community is different because each community says something different with respect to how they view the superintendent process and or the district as a whole. This community, of course, interested in centering student voice and community, et cetera. This community of Orange Unified may have a different perspective. Our recruiting advantage, again, nationwide organization. We've done some phenomenal work here in California. Superintendents, both retired as well as other board members working for the organization. We do understand the nature of this. Many of us have been doing this for many, many years. And there's a plethora of searches that we have going on as we speak. And so we most certainly would like to work with Orange Unified and to make sure that we can help you find exactly the right superintendent to move the system forward. So this is the selection phase. Utilizing leadership profile and the surveys, we will conduct a screening of all applicants to ensure that there was a match based upon, of course, a host of data points, not the least of which includes the district strategic plan. We conduct the various reference checks. Very important to not just do that first Google pass, but a very in-depth background on each and every superintendent, the one who would make it to the selection phase. We'd present a slate supporting materials of qualified applicants. If in fact the board wanted to leverage a Delphi technique where there was a process of elimination, we would then do that. If we went with a process to where members of the board learned of the applicants the day of the first interview, then we would modify the overall process phase or selection phase, but you still would have an opportunity to engage a slate based upon a rubric. So we would pretty much remove the gender, we remove the name of their current district, and any attribute they could identify where they're coming from, because we wouldn't want to put them in harm's way, right? And we're looking strictly at qualifications. And then the board would select based upon that. Those individuals would then come to the first round of interviews, and then you'd weed it down. It could be 5, it could be 6, okay? Bellflower search netted nearly 40 people. Bellflower Unified is a different district with a $100 million fund balance. So everybody wanted to go to Bellflower. It's a lot of money, all right? So, and some of the other searches, the numbers are different. Different level of complexity. We were able to move the Santa Monica Malibu superintendent to Bellflower. Phenomenal fit, phenomenal fit. And so again, it's just based upon making certain that we utilize all of our data points to ensure that we're aligning the right superintendent. There's absolutely no way, there's no way that the board would have time to go through 20 applicants, meaning first round interview, 20 people. No way. Because you're not gonna get that number of applicants for first round. That almost would have to be 50 people applying for the job. Remember, many folks have already signed, either their contracts have been renewed, you're already past the release time, right? March 15th is a May 15th is a shall, and you wouldn't want anybody being released anyway. So this is gonna have to be an aggressive search where we're out there actively looking for people who are currently seated, SUPs, or seated at that C-suite level, associate, assistant, deputy. The HYA difference, of course, you know, I'm saying Zoom for every applicant, but again, if we're gonna, we can do something, a mixture of Zoom. You may want to prefer to have people face-to-face. It's always good to kind of look at an individual's micro-inequity to kind of see if, in fact, how you feel about them, right? I mean, it's always important because you're hiring someone that hopefully would be here for 4 years, minimum contract 4 years. So you do want to be able to have that face-to-face interaction and engagement. Again, if the board wanted to go with 24-hour access to all materials, that's easily available to you. You can have a confidential search all the way to the first round of interview, or you can know who's applying along the way. Not a problem, either way. But the objective is for the applicant or the aspirant to have full faith and confidence in the process and to ensure that no one will leak any information out because people will pull out of the process. Very critical, very essential. And so this is an example of the HYA portal, board members and authorized users. In this context, it would just be the board members, unless a board member is designated someone on staff to also have access to the portal if you were so inclined. 24 hours a day, you can have all of the information, links, etc., notes, surveys, focus group calendars, the job postings. Every single aspect of the overall phase would be encased in this portal you'd have access to. So any questions?
Thank you. Questions?
I have a couple.
Trustee Minor?
What is your experience in negotiating contracts, and is that something included in the fee?
So that's actually a great question. So in a recent search, we just simply listed the salary. So you cut the negotiation out. List the salary, you put the advertisement up at AXA or wherever you place it, simply list the salary, list what you're willing to pay. And then we go from there. Once you've solidified the salary, everything else is simply perfunctory. You do not want to get off into a back and forth negotiation with the superintendent. Let it be clear what you're willing to pay, off you go. And that's actually, you can easily publish that in any of the publications. But we'd work in concert with your legal counsel with respect to a contract that's suitable and a contract that is not superintendent-centric, that centers the board as the governing authority of the local education agency here. You do not want a contract that is so pro-superintendent, you're locked in. And I can show you some horrific contracts that have recently been written by law firms. I won't call any names to protect the innocent and the guilty. But you just want to make certain that the contract is closely aligned with the vision of the district, and that at any point in time, you're so inclined to release a superintendent, you can. And there are many ways in which that can be accomplished.
And then I have another question. Thank you for that answer. You mentioned you're working with a couple of other school districts. How does that work? Do you work at the same time with those school districts that you would with us if we chose you? And about how many districts are you working with currently that we would be kind of fighting for the same candidates potentially?
Well, the other superintendent search will actually end within a few weeks. And so all my time will be dedicated to working on this particular search. They started a little earlier. You're starting a little later. So 100% of the time will be dedicated to this district and ensuring that we can move very aggressively on the overall process. But I'm working roughly 5 or 6 districts. But every search is coming to an end, meaning you're approving contracts within the next 2 or 3 weeks around the country, that is.
And then I don't know if you spoke about it in the in what you just showed us, but what is the fee?
So the fee is in the proposal. Our fee is 20% of the salary minus the statutory benefits. So if you're building a superintendent salary with a range, we would go the low end of the range.
Okay. And then, okay, my last question. The superintendent searches that you've been conducting, do you currently have a pool of potential superintendents that would then just reapply or do you start fresh?
No, I have absolutely no pool. None whatsoever. And as a matter of fact, again, I'm gonna be very honest with you, straight up. If someone is applying for a superintendency right now and you're not going after them aggressively and recruiting them, there's a problem. There's a problem. So if you're a seated superintendent and you're looking to leave where you are right now, you're in April, right? And you didn't decide to apply for any jobs in December, and Orange Unified pops up, and you look at the salary, and you want to come over based upon the salary, I'm a little incredulous. So that's why I think it's very important we had to utilize the various rubrics to identify the type of person we want, and then we go after those individuals, whether they're in San Diego, Orange, LA, Riverside counties, we go after those types of superintendents. And then, of course, we look at whether they're deputies or assistants or whatever the case may be. But the board, as well as your community, would help to inform that process because you know the kind of individual you'd want, right? The superintendent or the aspirant would have to have experience engaging a board and a very active board and a very active community. So if they're kind of fearful and a little timid, then this might not be the appropriate place for them. But again, all of that will come out as you're moving through the process and as you're having informal discussions with superintendents. And then looking at their contracts, whether they're assistants, et cetera, looking at their contracts to figure out, okay, what is the timeline for which they can then exit their contract to enter into a new one.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Trustee Erickson?
Yep, thank you. Thank you for your presentation. It was very thorough. So just so I get this right, then your fee is 20% of the base salary?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so $250, it's $50,000.
Roughly.
That's your
Yes, ma'am.
fee. And then on top of that, it looks like we would pay for any customized questions that we wanted to ask in your surveys?
Yes, but we can negotiate if we've gotten to that point. We can definitely negotiate based upon that factor.
And then I also saw that it said translation. We would have to pay to get it translated into other languages. Is that also negotiable?
Yes,
Okay.
or we can utilize the translation services that currently exist within the district.
Okay, I'm just going off your proposal.
Absolutely,
So,
absolutely.
Reference checks, it indicates $1,100 to $1,950 per candidate. So we would pay that extra on top?
Yes.
Okay. And then obviously advertising and you said there's something about your website having, how many hits does your website have when you put those job listings up? You put that somewhere and I can't find it now.
So we pretty much advertise every superintendent search, irrespective of
Oh, whether it's yours
whether
or
it's
not.
right. We advertise every superintendent search, which helps to drive applicants or aspirants to our website from all over the country,
I
as
did
well as the
notice
state
that.
of California.
Yeah, I went on your website because then you
Yes.
can see like which firms actually their districts are using. So you said that you've placed 25 superintendents in the last 5 years in California. And I couldn't tell, but I think it was 3 in the 21 to 22 school year. And then have you placed any this year yet?
We'll be placing a few.
Okay.
Can't say it at the moment, but we'll be placing a few in your immediate vicinity
Okay.
and have them wrapped up within the next few weeks.
Well, we know who's hired you because we do that kind of work around here.
I know.
Okay, so current searches in California, how many do you have?
2.
Okay. Your proposal also says you give us 4 days, 4 meetings with our district, and then we pay $2,500 per day if we want additional meetings. So I wasn't totally clear about that. You list 5 different types of meetings. So in general, how many meetings would it take for us to get going on this?
Now, those meetings would be broken up, even if we did community-based surveys or community-based focus groups. If a district wanted 10 focus groups, then we would, of course, cover the 4 and then have to pay for the additional focus groups. Now, again, I wouldn't recommend too many focus groups, or we move online, which would, of course, reduce costs, but also help us to move a little bit faster.
But less accurate sometimes, too.
Yes, but it just depends on if you're able to get families out. If the district has a phenomenal mechanism, then let's utilize those particular conduits which already exist to get families out. But if you're going to struggle and families are not going to want to participate, then we can, of course, survey the community, your local cities, et cetera, online. But we're more than willing to do whatever the district would have us to do by way of community engagement.
Okay. Now, are you present with us when we do the interviews of the superintendents?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, so you're there and you help us develop questions and all of that kind of thing?
Questions that are built based upon the engagement of the board, as well as meeting with the executive cabinet, and then you're extrapolating from the leadership profile. Remember, we're going to survey the community, whether we do it online or in person, and then you'll have an opportunity to grasp those questions. And then, of course, just simply knowing the community and knowing the politics, you want to be upfront with the superintendent and ask them, well, how do you feel about these particular issues? And that would determine perhaps if the board would want them to serve as a superintendent or not. So again, you want to be very candid with people. You don't want to placate them. You want to be very honest and forthright. We can all Google and read. So that all needs to come out in the overall question and answer period.
Okay. And in terms of the timeline, obviously, we want to get somebody, a quality candidate. The time is secondary to quality, in my opinion, anyway. I mean, we need to get it done as quickly as we can, but we need a quality process, and I don't want to rush into it. So, but I do know that we are starting at a very strange time in the school year, so we get that. It would have been nice to do it a little earlier. Let's see. I think that is it. Okay. Are you local around here? Or do you have to fly in terms of placing? I'm thinking of costs for travel, that kind of thing.
91 Freeway, Wilmington.
Nice. Okay.
Compton.
And Ms. Pitts is up in up in the Bay Area.
Yeah, but she has a home between the Bay as well as Oregon, so we'll minimize the travel costs. That's not something that we would even fret over, because we understand the nature of the timeline. So if we have to eat up some of the travel, we will.
Yeah.
And remember, we won't always need Dr. Pitts,
Mm-hmm.
right? A lot of this work, I mean, I'll be on the ground aggressively pushing.
Okay, all right, I don't have anything further.
Anyone else?
Um,
Ms. Yamasaki?
Yes, thank you. I am concerned about some of the costs because I know your fees you'd mentioned is going to be approximately 50 to 55,000, but then your extra costs or enhancements that you have here, the extra days, the surveys, the translations, the background checks. In your typical experience, how much money does a district of our size would spend on something like this? Because I want to make sure that we're comparing.
So, board member, I want to take a different route to answer your question.
Okay.
We're in April. So typically, we're not starting a superintendent search process in April to July 1. So if you pull this back, let's go 6 months or 90 days, but in 2022, fourth quarter, you do, let's say Bellflower did 4, they maybe did 10 or 12 focus groups, but they had so much time. The process was done in 90 days. When other search firms says they couldn't get it accomplished, we were able to get it accomplished in 90 days. So this can be done. You may not need the 4 days. If the board wants to rely upon the online survey and online engagement, then let us do that. If not, then we can perhaps do 2 focus groups. But understand that those focus groups are very integral, whether it's online or in person or whether it's via telephony. We have to hear community voice to help to inform the leadership profile, because the superintendent has to understand not what the paper or any blogs might state. We need to hear from representation of the community, right? So I wouldn't fret over the cost because we can negotiate or we can shave around.
Okay.
But at this stage, it's critically important to be able to identify the type of superintendent we would want, and then let's go knock on those doors. As we're doing the advertisement up and down the state and nationally, let's knock on the doors to see if, in fact, we're interested in any of the individuals in our immediate vicinity. Now, since we talked about costs, let's put it on the table. The board has to also consider if you have an out-of-state or Northern California applicant, are you willing to fly them down for the first interview? Okay. Think about that. That's a cost. Not cost borne on our side, but just a cost borne with respect to the overall process, right? So these are just things that you'd want to consider.
Don't get me wrong. I mean, I understand that this process is going to cost a lot of money. But I also want to make sure that we are understanding what our responsibilities are in terms of what's going to be covered and what's not going to be covered and how much we can anticipate that the total cost would be. Because, like I said, I want to compare apples to apples, and that's why I'm asking the questions. And I understand also that it depends on how many surveys, I get that. But I also want to know generally, like, what costs do a typical district might incur for doing this, for their fees? Because I want to be mindful of our monies here.
So you may have a district who might consider, let's say, a $30,000 fee with a transition service of $50,000 to $100,000, year-long transition service, board member engagement, procurement of a database that would help the superintendent transition. It just depends on the district. On average, districts are paying between $40,000 and $55,000 for a qualified search process. Right? My objective is not to push volume. So for me to tell you I'm doing 40 searches in California, well, at the end of the day, there's like 1,000 plus school districts. I don't want to push volume. I'm not Toyota selling cars. The objective is to really be able to hone in and be able to utilize the skill set as well as the relationships cultivated in order to bring high-quality superintendents. I would not want to move someone from a neighboring district to Orange and then that person out to LA County and over to Santa Barbara. I wouldn't want to see you at the California School Board Association conference and you're pointing and saying, this guy did a shell game and moved us someone from over here to over here. So I'm not interested in volume. I'm interested in quality and making certain that we bring forth applicants that can get the job done.
I do have one more question, and I've asked this with all these search firms. I wanted to know, do you have, because in order to have transparency and integrity, I want to make sure, do you have any business or relationship with anybody in the district or on the board?
No.
Okay.
And any business relationship that I would have with this district would constitute something called a 1090 violation. So we do not have any 1090 violations. And so I have no business with this district. I'm in no business with anyone on the board.
Thank you.
So, thank you.
Any questions? Trustee Ortega.
Great presentation, thank you. And every firm, for the most part, has heard the confidentiality aspect of it and how people can lose their jobs. Once they apply and go, yeah, well, I'm going to apply, and all of a sudden they get found out, and whoosh. So I hold that because it's the sensitivity, the confidentiality as we go in moving forward in this arena. So I appreciate you bringing that up in that manner. So thank you. And it's as you well know, having serving on a board, that superintendent search, you go through a lot. And it's a lot of questions. So it could be one town hall, one forum, two forums, three. It could be one, and it could be the initial interviews, and you're settled there. So just understanding that, walking through all those different avenues of the search. So, but thank you. And like I said, I appreciate the confidentiality part of it, because that is critical on this level, because we don't want to harm anybody in their profession. So thank you.
Trustee Page.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. One of the questions that I had was about the transition process and your involvement after the candidate selected.
Something that we'd want to definitely sculpture and curate with the board to make certain that if you're transitioning someone from out of state or even from a neighboring district, providing a measure of support, working with the board around governance training and other forms of professional development, even assisting if perhaps members of the executive cabinet were to depart, which happens, being able to help provide interim support to ensure that another placement could be made. It just depends on whatever the district might need as far as the overall transition process. Some superintendents need no transition process. They've done all their work. They've reviewed the LCAP. They've reviewed all the interims. They can walk in the door and go right to work, okay, with minimal support. You currently have an existing team in place with contracts, so the superintendent would rely heavily upon those individuals. But again, that's something that the board, as well as my firm, could easily discuss subsequently.
Okay. And then also, if like one of us would approach you with a candidate suggestion, how would you respond to that?
Well, we encourage that. We encourage the community, everyone, certainly, bring forth the individual. We'll direct them to the application process. They'll be vetted. And we're vetting along the way. And so because I've been around a while and people are going to be very straight up with me, they might not be very candid with somebody else, but they're going to tell me, hey, listen, Mickey Mouse is a nice person, but a little slimy. Okay, well then we're not going to move that person forward. A little sketchy, we're not going to move that person forward because it's my reputation as well as that of the firm. So we welcome recommendations from any board member. Teachers union, classified folk, doesn't matter. If this gentleman here, the security guard, he got somebody he knows, hey, let's get him in the process. But let's vet them accordingly. And that's what happens. This is why it's so important for that community voice, because a lot of times individuals, you make a placement without doing proper vetting. So yeah, there's actually another background check you'd want to do. There's a top level, and then there's a very deep background check you'd want to definitely invest a little money and time on. And the district could easily do some of that work in concert with your legal counsel.
Thank you. And then in your research process regarding our district, in addition to searching online and our demographics and everything else, have you communicated with anyone else in terms of the background of our district or any other information?
Well, I think everybody knows the background of Orange Unified. I mean, the reality is that we're all political people, and that's okay. So no one is shy, and no one I know, if they're afraid to apply, then we won't want them anyway. The reality is, whether it's an urban district in central Los Angeles or whether it's Orange Unified, there's going to be challenges, and you want someone who's malleable enough to be able to work through. And so at the end of the day, the question can be asked of me, why would you want to do the superintendent search of Orange Unified? Hey, why not? There's 20+ thousand students who yearn for high quality education. They're going to help to drive our state's economy in the future. Why not help this district to ensure that there's stellar leadership?
Thank you.
Anyone else? I got a question. Something you spoke about earlier, board member asked about assisting the board with compensation and negotiation, and you stated compensation would be basically what's advertised. So compensation would be advertised. It would be, so it's basically non-negotiable, you might say. So does this limit us from a candidate perspective?
No, because this district pays very well. Orange, Yorba Linda, Capistrano, Newport Mesa, Irvine, you pay phenomenally well. So if you're paying a superintendent between $350 and $371, roughly thereof, you got a 12-month buyout. This is all standard. I mean, superintendent, he can tell you this is all standard, 12-month buyout. You're doing a 403B or 457. You're doing deferred comp a whole life. You're doing an auto allowance, period. So if they come in here, well, I want you to buy me a home. No. Well, we want a driver, which people ask for, believe it or not. So you want to just put everything out there. The interim superintendent, or the acting superintendent, or the previous superintendent had a great contract. And there's also some data for which I can easily provide you on all the salaries in Orange County. And they're much higher in Orange County than they are in LA County. So there would not be an issue as far as negotiation with many of these applicants. And if the salary gets too high, you don't want to have a scenario where there's compaction. You don't want a superintendent making far more than Irvine or far more than a much larger district. You're going to take a hit for that. You've had enough hits. No need to get into a fight over paying a superintendent an exorbitant amount of money. LA Unified is around $450. It's an enormous district, so we wouldn't want to do that. And if somebody's looking for that, then I would most certainly relegate them to the round foul.
Okay, thank you. That concludes our presentation here. Thank you.
Thank you. Where's my escort? Where did he go? Oh, there he is.
Mr. President, just as a matter of housekeeping, as you decide what you're going to do moving forward right now, all the presenters are still here, and they're in another room. So it seemed as though the board members had a chance to ask questions of each of them, but they're going to stay here if there's a need, for you guys wanting to bring them back at all. So as you guys figure out what you'd like to do next, please let us know so we can advise them whether or not they're done for the night, or whether or not a few need to stay, or whether or not they all need to stay.
Great, thank you. Do we need to take a 5-minute break? Why don't we take a 5-minute break and then, or 5-10-minute break here, and then we'll come back and discuss. Okay, folks, I'd like to try to get started again here. Okay, so this is where we start to decide how we're going to proceed or kind of maybe eliminate some of these folks from consideration. Anybody have any ideas or thoughts? Trustee Erickson.
I think because of the experience factor and the cost factor that I would be willing to exclude Lincom, LANQM, and Stanton Chase.
Okay,
I second that.
okay, yeah.
I also agree.
Okay. That is a big concern to me as well of experience. No K-12 experience. So is everybody okay with that?
We all hated the same thing, so.
Mr. Superintendent, do we need to vote on that? Do we need to vote on that? Okay.
Mr. Covert does not have a microphone in front of him, but he
That's
said
fine.
that it's fine with the general
Okay.
consensus of the board.
So now, what about the other three? Any one of those that we want to consider or not consider?
I would say that my top front runners, because of the experience, and they're located mostly in California. I like both McPherson and Jacobson and Hazard Young Atia.
Okay.
I agree.
Okay.
I'm willing to, mostly because I believe that they're not local Summit Search Solutions, to not
Not
consider
consider
them.
them.
Correct.
I am a little concerned that they're coming from South Carolina and
North Carolina.
North Carolina, excuse me, Carolina, and the fact that they haven't really. I mean, they won't know California, and they're just getting started. So how does everybody feel about that? Eliminating Summit Search.
Yes.
I really like them a lot, but I would agree with that analysis.
Okay. This is amazing. We're down to 2. Okay, good. Now, let me propose we can vote on one now, or if everybody wants to just step back, have these both on the agenda on the
Is
3rd.
there a microphone on somewhere?
Yeah. It's,
Hearing
No, it's
background
the-
noise.
It's the interpreter.
Oh,
okay, so the idea would be have both of these on the agenda April 13th, and then we take them each and we vote.
Do we want to talk about them now and then?
Whatever you like.
Sleep on it?
I'm just throwing it out there because I mean we could vote on one of these now if anybody feels strongly about any one of them, but we can wait until the 13th.
I think I'd like to take a little bit of time to call the references and stuff, but I think that we can probably all agree. I don't think it's much of a debate. McPherson and Jacobson has the most experience and they're the best price. I mean, I don't think that's a big secret.
That's a heavy consideration there.
By a long shot. I mean, Hazard Young Atia, as much as I like them, they are double the cost, and they don't have the market share or experience that McPherson Jacobson has.
Right. Any other comments?
sorry. Go ahead.
Trustee Rumsey?
I agree with Trustee Erickson regarding the cost and a sense of optimism from McPherson Jacobson. But I also appreciated Hazard Young just kind of for lack of a better term, just kind of straight shooting.
Their candor.
Yeah.
Yep.
But I would be in favor of having a discussion, but not voting until the 13th. on it.
Okay. Mr. Ortega, do you have a comment?
I would just echo, the straight shooting was, and the candidness is very welcoming. It's like almost blending the two.
Yeah.
Dr. Bowen, firsthand experience of serving as a superintendent, which is very helpful. And just recently serving as a superintendent, so the understanding and the complexities that go with it, especially through all the challenges that we're facing in education. So, McPherson, yeah, Michelle Bowen. And so, Bowers, sorry, thank you. Yeah, yeah. So it was great. I mean, the fee is good. But yeah, I mean, I would go as McPherson, even Hazard. I like the straight shooting and the very candidness, because it's a breath of fresh air.
Thank you. Mr. Ortega, anyone else? Trustee Yamasaki?
Obviously, we've rounded it down to the two, and I would concur with everybody else. I agree with Trustee Ortega when he said that Michelle Bauer has superintendent experience, and that would be very valuable in the search. And she was very professional, and I like the way she presented everything. With Hazard Young, you're right, he is a straight shooter, and I could probably vote that he was the funniest one tonight. But we're not operating on that, so, but we need someone that we can trust and someone that we can connect with, and I feel that both of them have provided that. But to me, the cost of McPherson and also the experience of the Michelle Bauer as a superintendent kind of makes them stand out for me.
Okay. Anyone else?
So we go on the one that's potential conflict of interest.
So
There is-
it is
there
a
is
noise.
someone-
I'm telling you.
I hear
We can hear you guys.
Trustee Minor?
So what I would say is what I was going to ask is, how do we approach the idea of the competitiveness of the proposed fees? Because obviously there's a very big difference in the fees. And so is that something that we would negotiate prior to selecting one of these two firms? Or is that you select the firm and then you negotiate after?
Select the firm, negotiate after.
Okay, so if we went with Hazard, then we would basically be putting ourselves in a more expensive scenario, but I don't know, I guess it's kind of one of those things, if you pay more, do you get a better package? I don't know. That's just something that went through my head.
Okay, thank you. Trustee Page?
I think, I mean, now that we've narrowed it down to two, the biggest thing that I'm looking for, it is in the quality of the candidate. So even though I understand that we do have a sense of urgency, I want to ensure that we're not just trying to make that July 1 date, that we really are looking for the best candidate for our school district. So regardless of which one we choose, that's just something that I wanted to have as the topic of conversation when we're considering a firm.
Okay. So I concur with all my colleagues here on everything they've said. I look forward to us voting on this on the 13th. Please, on the 13th.
Mr. President,
Yes.
I spoke to Mr. Covert, and he suggested that if you want to bring the two back for consideration on the 13th, that you might want to consider a vote to do that, to bring back the two.
Okay.
And so
okay.
that will.
Oh, that's
help
very
with
good.
the
That'll
process.
be our action.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so do I have, let's let me see here. Okay, yep. Do I have a motion to bring back on the 13th for a vote, McPherson and Jacobson and Hazard, Young, and Tate?
I'll move.
I'll second
Moved
that.
by trustee Rumsey, seconded by trustee Minor. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, motion passes to bring those two firms back for a vote.
And just one last consideration, I don't know if you want the firms to also be here in person to answer any questions, or the board will just deliberate and decide. It would be important for the staff to let them know.
Okay. Is it necessary?
Well, there was information requested from,
Oh, yeah.
McPherson and Jacobson. So if we can receive that in a Friday packet before
Right.
the 13th, I think that would be
That's a good point.
sufficient.
Yep. Yeah, there's some confirmation we've got to get from Jacobson. McPherson, Jacobson.
Could we make sure that any questions that are asked that are given to the entire board, just so that we all have the same information to make our decisions?
Okay. Okay, so my only request is that when we vote on April for one of these firms, be prepared, excuse me, be prepared to give a few, look at your calendars and look at a few dates in probably late February, early May. Late April, early May, to have our first meeting with the firm. I believe if we can go into their proposal and see their calendar, and I think that's one of the first things that happens is
They interview
the board first, and then they move on to whomever else. Would that be interviewing the board? Would that be open session or closed, Mr. Covert?
Typically, it's a combination of both, meaning that you're going to be identifying the process, that's open session. Identifying qualities of candidates, that's typically a closed session if you want to go that far on the first meeting. The other issue is there was not a staff recommendation this evening other than bringing forth these, and that's the way the agenda will look next time. The staff is not going to recommend one over the other. That will be your decision, and then I would recommend that authorization be given to staff to sign a contract pursuant to the submittals that they gave this evening. And then that way you won't be waiting another 2 weeks to have a contract signed with them, but delegate that authority to staff per their proposals.
Fair enough.
You can decide that at that time, but I'm saying.
No, that's a good point.
One thing was we were to move the
Trying to
process
expedite,
along.
right,
We
trying
were
to
going to
expedite.
have a contract next time. You
Right.
won't have a contract, you'll have a selection.
That's a good point, Mr. Covert. Okay, so that's what we'll do. When we vote, we'll also vote to instruct staff to negotiate the contract. Okay, any questions?
I have a question about when we started the meeting and there had been a question Ms. Erickson had addressed to Mr. Gonzalez. Is there protocol or a process where her question then is sent to us through email so that it doesn't necessarily come up here that the question was asked prior to the meeting?
Yes, I think those are some of the conversations that I'm kind of learning in the process, as which ones are quick questions that people just have and they don't really need to go back to the entire body, and which ones are important for everybody to know. So it wasn't my thought that there was a general misunderstanding by the board about what that item was, so I thought just having a direct conversation with Ms. Erickson was sufficient. But if there's a different idea about that, I'm open to communicating every conversation I have with any board member to the rest of you, either through a Friday letter or through an email.
Thank you.
I think typically then it's kind of subjective, but like typically if it's a critical question, then you share it, but then that's very.
That was a decision I made in that moment. I thought that there was a general understanding and I was just clarifying something. But if I get the sense that all the board members have the same question, then I try to get the information back to everyone.
So I was just thick, is that what you're saying? I still didn't understand the answer, though, because it was listed as an information/action item, which I don't think we should do.
Yeah, I think
because
if
it
we
needs
go
to be
back
one or
in
the
some of
other.
our past items, you'll see that happen quite a bit. And I think sometimes that's more related to board docs or transition to board docs and less about how we kind of work our meetings, but there's kind of drop-down menus. And so I think if we go back in our board docs, you'll see some things listed in multiple ways and procedural, informational, action, and some of it's kind of unclear and sometimes staff marks multiple.
Got it.
It could have been written in a way that said recommendation, it is recommended that a firm be chosen. Or, something a little bit more direct.
Okay, thank you.
Question?
Yes.
Mr. Gonzalez? Or even Mr. Rivera and Mr. Groom, correct? I just wanted to be out there. This process, did any of you hear from me on the process or any information or any verbiage or anything at all?
No.
About any candidates or anything of that nature? Okay. I just want to be clear. I had zero involvement in this process. It was staff's involvement.
Yeah, and I'd like to thank Mr. Rivera and Mr. Groom for the excellent job they did in, sending out the RP, getting the candidates back, qualifying them, getting them set up for the meeting today. I thought it was good information for you guys, for the board to have today. And we'll see you on the 13th.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Groom. I know that was a heavy lift in a very, very short time. So thank you so much for your hard work in this.
Thank you, everyone. I will adjourn the meeting at 9:33. No, 9:28. Thank you.